This episode of RPMMORadio is brought to you by all our amazing and generous Patreon donors. Visit us at patreon.com/RPMMORadio to help support the show. It is also brought to you by...
Going on a long vacation in the real world, but need a plotline to drive your friends insane back home? We do kidnappings and attempted murders at your say-so, and always wait until we're sure you are totally gone and unable to be reached before we begin. Create chaos, frustration, confusion, and annoyance. We ensure that your storyline cannot advance until you, magical, special you, return, and your friends will be unable to do anything but roll their eyes and wring their hands in anticipation. Force them to wait for you. We also provide you with quick and easy tantrums for when you return, and no one really wants or even cares to finish your boring, monotonous plotline. Contact us at Dead End Adventures. We're here to serve you, because fuck those guys.
You're listening to RPMMORadio.
Does internet porn know you're cheating on it?
Where entertainment and roleplay in MMORPGs have little hybrid mutant babies.
Make a note of this. Dishonor on you, dishonor on your cow, dishonor on your whole family.
And now, here's your hosts, Ashen Phoenix, Civ, Jazz, Strafe, and Unfe.
Everybody off. We need to go on a quick adventure.
Hello, role players. Welcome to RPMMORadio. This is our 78th episode, How to Plot. I, of course, am one of your hosts, Ashen Phoenix, as you heard, and with me today is the full crew back from our long stint of going wherever the fuck we had to, separately and individually, and also being busy. That would be Jazz, Sib, Strafe, and, of course, Unfe.
Hey!
We're back!
Hello!
And in our call waiting room, in our call screener, is Rahanar, fresh from having his brain tickled by a swab to see if he has the flu. Good news, it only took him 3 times to figure out. No, he's fine. Poor bastard. Seriously, there's nothing worse than that flu test except for...
The flu test.
I'm thinking. I don't know, genocide's pretty awful. Mm-hmm. But I don't really... I've never had that happen to me, so still flu test, yeah. But anyway. So yeah, if you want to call in, rpmradio.com/Discord, join our Discord server, go to the caller waiting room, and Rahanar will be there to make sure that your stuff works and that, you're not weird or creepy. And actually, that won't stop you. Just mostly it's that you can be heard. I mean, you don't sound like you're in a tunnel. I agree with that, Indigo Jules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Urinary catheter?
Mm-hmm.
No. No. Haven't had that happen to me either, so still.
That one's pretty terrible.
Yeah, well, that hasn't happened to me, so I don't care. It doesn't matter if
you'll
it's
know
happened
when it does.
to other people. So, all right. Well, appreciate everybody tuning in over at twitch.tv/RPMRadio. We do this, almost every weekend, Saturday, 7 Central Time. We are, of course, here today because earlier in the month we already took off, so we're here for you. Yay. Yay. Of course, we do have Jazz actually came up with the idea today, which is a good one on how to create plots. So we've got as we say, we've got a solid, I think actually in this episode, we have a solid 25 minutes worth of entertainment and plot, and we will jam that into a 2-hour show. So, good for you for showing up. It's fantastic. You can also, of course, catch us on the podcast after it. If you're not listening live, which, why aren't you? I mean, you should be. What do you got?
All the cool kids are doing it, bro.
I go to work, or I'm playing games, or I'm role-playing. You should be listening to 5 idiots talk about roleplay online. That's what you should
That's
be
right.
doing.
Yeah.
But I guess if you can't, you can always go over to like Apple Podcast or, wherever,
Or else.
Android Podcast, Spotify, Podbean. I do actually want to give one place a shout out that's been kind of blowing up lately, apparently, is over at WordPress. Hey, WordPress people, you're looking good today, by the way. I like that shirt. Is that new? No? Yeah, well, you must wash it because it looks fantastic on you. Mm-hmm. So thanks everybody over there at WordPress for following us and liking the episodes. I know next to literally nothing actually about WordPress other than...
WordPress is a journal type situation. They're really
and you can
cool.
put podcasts on it.
Nice.
Yeah, you
It's
can.
also a
They're
place
really
to
nice.
build your website, but hey.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we went with Squarespace because it's idiot friendly, and I am an idiot.
So is WordPress.
Yeah, but I heard about Squarespace first. So it didn't really matter.
Fair enough. I have an old journal on WordPress. I need to go check on that.
Oh, it's not there anymore. They kicked off all the
It's already been hacked by the, internet
Russians.
trolls. And the Russians, yeah.
Those damn Russians.
Oh, the you.
And
The Ruskies.
if it's not the Russians, it's the North Koreans. And if it's not the North Koreans, it's those goddamn French Canadians.
Oi.
I was mostly talking about Ericus.
Or was he?
But no, we appreciate
You
everybody
leave our
following us
Ericus
even over at
alone.
WordPress. I don't know a whole lot about it. I do more with it, but it's just kind of like it does it on its own. It updates, so it's like, hey,
Kind of nice that way.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So with that, how's everyone's week? Everybody have a week?
It was weak.
No. It was a week, yeah.
It ran together. And
It
Monday
was a
felt like
weak
Friday. It
week.
was pretty. It was what it was. It's done now.
I was off most of mine, and it was glorious.
Must be nice.
It was.
I imagine it was.
It was.
Imagine
It was
it was quite
fantastic.
capital.
You know what it was? You know what it was better than? Going to
Going to
work
work?
like some schmuck.
Yeah,
Yeah, like some schmuck. Like a schmuck.
deliver my mail, sucker.
Schmuck.
We would if you'd clean out your mailbox.
That's right.
I just did actually.
Don't park in front of that shit.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's right. Well, good. I'm glad everybody had a decent week, or a week. Ericus is typing. That's never good. So, all right. Well, let's see what we've been doing in roleplay. And judging by this, it looks like. Yeah. Nothing. Looks like nothing happened in roleplay because nobody wrote anything down.
Yeah.
But I know. Sometimes things happen off of the spreadsheet. So with that, let's go to our most likely candidate that probably wrote something during the week, but then didn't put it on here, and that, of course, would be Jazz. What, Jazz? You can't mute yourself when I'm calling on you. You can't do that.
Jazz.
Yes, I'm here.
Jazz. We're cheering you on.
Did you shout at the kids already? Is that what that was?
Yes, that's what that
See, and
was.
this
Yes.
with your new setup, we didn't hear them.
Yes, I did, and I was like, if it starts picking them, I told them, if I start picking up your voices, I'm going to loon. You need to keep your mouth shut.
Shut your damn mouth, child.
I
don't-
asked for silence in this house for 2 special hours once a week. They can be quiet.
So what do you do? What do
Or
you do
else.
2 hours during the other parts of the week? I mean,
They're just
Or-
loud. My house
or-
is loud.
or is
all
it
the
like
time.
me, where you just break up special time into like 2.5-minute increments throughout the
Yeah.
week?
Yeah, basically.
I don't know what you guys do with the other, minute and a half, but still. Yeah, that's just me. So hey, Jazz,
Yes.
what'd you do this week?
Well, I had some roleplay in ESO. Not much. And most of it was yesterday and Thursday.
I did it.
But I did keep up my journal for Fallout, although I haven't played in the last couple of days. I did play a little bit by myself. And I had fun on, I'm trying to think if it was Tuesday in Fallout with Stray and Cab working on my house and kind of redoing it a little bit. That was fun. Let's see. But I did do the journal, so I will read some of the journal I don't want to take up too much time, but it's 3 short entries about I got jumped by some, what are they called again?
Wendigos.
Wendigos, right.
Winnebagos.
And I rolled that probably would leave a mark. So she's been struggling with that for the rest of the week.
Okay, can I donate my talking time to Jazz because I didn't write nothing, so she doesn't have to worry about going over.
Oh, that's cool.
This isn't the floor of the Senate. I submit my time, Speaker, to so and so and so can go fuck off.
I submit my time to Jazz.
Calm down, Pelosi.
Hey.
I'm sorry, I have ADD moment, but if you don't watch the bad lip reading, the one they did on the president's speech between Mike Pence and Pelosi. Oh, man. Don't touch my gavel. Squeak, squeak. What have I said about talking to me during these? We need to talk less. I had a cockroach. His name was Bill. Sorry. Anyway, so Jazz, read your journals. Take your time.
Okay. This is Journal 7. I was at the Nuka-Cola plant rummaging around, shooting things, and generally being a nuisance to the Scorch there when I realized I had an errand on my Pip-Boy that I needed to attend to. After dumping everything into storage at my place, I got into my power armor and headed out. I'd never been where I was. I've been doing that more now that I have a safe place to crash, you know. It makes me curious what I missed all those years trekking about, following roads and paths. I wasn't safe. I didn't have a safe place and couldn't chance getting hurt. And I did get hurt this time. Not horridly, but bad enough. I'll get to that. Anyway, who should show up but Irkas, who saw me enter from a perch and headed to join me. He knew it was bad in there and wanted to help. I was drawn to explore these 3 tall places that looked like houses to me. And they were, but littered with mutants. Nasty, angry, mechanical protection, turrets, and other fun stuff. Those damn commie metal fleas can kiss my entire ass, by the way. Anyway, I got my errand done and learned how to make excavator armor in the process. I found a small ass ton of screws, too, which I ended up using on repairs. Ain't that just how it is? Anyway, I'll have to go back and finish the building process, but that's a different day. I did get a lot of duct tape and screws. I found an interesting place to scavenge, which I'll return to with heavier armor and firepower. And I had some tense but fun times with Ericus. I came back and got out of my power armor, took a long, hot, bloody bath while Ericus fussed over me. It was an interesting experience, given I'm usually on my own these days. I apparently had a nasty gash on my back from what looks like a small knife or bayonet. Several deep cuts on my side, belly, and one on my leg that missed a large vein by half an inch. That was a bit chilling when we got down to stitching it. He looked at me with this grimace and I shrugged. I mean, that's how we'll all both go eventually, right? One lucky shot by some mutant or scorched and that'll be it. I'll bleed out and be dinner. I try not to think about it too much. We used impacts and healing salves, stitches, and sterile gauze packing. It will heal. The one on my back was the worst, but it missed my kidneys or anything vital. In the process of all this, he saw all my scars. He didn't say much, just touched them here and there and asked if I tended all these myself. I said, well, no one else about, so yes. He didn't say much after that. After the bath and medical attention, we cooked a nice meal together since he wouldn't let me do anything by myself. He made me sit for most of it, said I lost a lot of blood and was pale, which I suppose I was. I used one of the blood packs. I took some of the meds I keep on hand for infection. It'll be fine. Going to sleep now. Later. End. Journal 8. The last few days have been a bit touch and go. Ericus left that morning after he tended my wounds, and I thought I was fine. Even went scavenging for myself at the Nuka-Cola plant for a bit, but started to feel iffy. I shrugged it off because I'm an idiot and headed for White Springs, where I have some things I need from there. I was told they were there. What I wasn't told was that it would be ugly there, and boy, was it ugly. After a few hours and some nasty infected wounds, I managed to get clear enough to run away and get home. It took me 4 hours to get home. I don't remember getting home. Honestly, I barely remember running out. I know some other guys I didn't know showed up and started wailing on the scorched and ghouls. One of them came for me, too. By the by, I shot him in the face. He'll feel that later. And then I ran. That's all I can remember. I woke up in my bed covered in blood and smelling of infection and radworms. I had retched everywhere. I took some chems and felt better and ran a bath. I took a long hot bath in purified water, which is such a waste of resources, but I had a feeling it was necessary. Passed out in the bath and nearly drowned myself. Woke up thrashing underwater and puked and coughed it up and got out, crawled into bed and passed out again. Woke up burning with fever and hallucinating that my mother was there tending me. It was surreal. It's been a few days since that point. I eat when I'm conscious and try to remember to drink. I took myself outside long enough to get the purified water out of the ready chambers and go back inside. I poured a lot of whiskey on my open wounds, and so far I've used nearly every stim pack I have trying to help. Passed out on the floor for a while and woke up thrashing around and couldn't stop. I think it was a seizure. I got myself back in bed and slept for a long time. I woke up this morning covered in goo, or at least that's how it felt. I think my fever broke. The wounds are healed over a bit and I feel less out of it. I found 4 empty blood bags on the floor and a dozen stim packs. I cleaned up the house and was exhausted, went back to bed and slept. Got up and went outside to find radstags eating in my garden, and now I have steaks to cook. I took a long hot bath and got that goo off my skin. Journal 9. Well, what a crap week. I'm feeling better now. Fever passed. Yanked out my stitches and the gauze. It stunk to high heaven of infection and nearly made me heave. Apparently, I didn't get it clean enough. It was swollen and red, spreading when I came to with enough brains to see what was happening. Cleaned it out with a toothbrush and whiskey. Screamed and swore a lot, but it's better now. Fever got hot, and I paced and swore and stayed awake until I passed out from hallucinations. Took several cold baths in purified water after I put a fan over the surface for a bit to cool it. Old trick that old bastard taught me long ago. New stitches and sterile packing that I boiled for half a day in purified water did the trick. Pulled out the packing a few days later and let it bleed until the blood ran clear, just like the rules. Soaked it and used healing salve I made, and now it's finally scabbed over. I'll be more careful about penetrating wounds from now on. This one's going to scar. It's already making a thick bump where the wound was. Oh well. I was up and staggering around, weak and jiggly. Ate and didn't puke. Go me! I lost a few pounds in my face, I think. Back to being gaunt. Dark circles under my eyes, but it'll pass. Eating and drinking normally today, and my legs feel normal. Did a few power runs up and down the hill of my place and didn't feel like I would pass out, so I think I'm on the mend. One more day and I should be right as rain. Later. The end!
The end. Well, someone may be president, but somebody else lives on.
We'll see about that.
Well, what about you, Sib? You said you didn't have anything, really?
No, I didn't write any stories. I was a lazy
really
bum.
haven't role played either during the week. We were all, like I said, we were mostly off all week, and we mostly just got kind of quested around, and that was about it, really.
Yeah, I've been in Fallout 76 for weeks now, and I just can't bring myself to go to ESO right now because I'm having so much fun. Even though it's a trash can.
Haven't you read the reviews? It's a
I know,
garbage
I
game.
know.
You're not supposed to have
It's a
fun in
garbage
something.
game, but I love it.
You can't have fun in something other people don't like. That's the internet.
I will totally bore punch whoever says that to me.
No.
No. But I do really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of fun, and just brought up the topic to Stefay about maybe doing some of our goofiness as a stream.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of, I don't know, see what happens maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I hang out with him most of the time in 76. So.
Yeah. So how about you then, Yunfei? You do anything? I know some of what you did this week.
Yep, I got to smash finally.
Yeah, Yunfei and I smashed at their apartment. It was interesting.
It was a really good time.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. She kicked my ass eventually once she started getting comfortable with it. Smash Brothers Ultimate for those wondering.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But no, it was actually a lot of fun. And Tuna fell asleep on my lap for like half an hour, and she was adorable until my leg fell asleep, and I had to move her. Tuna's the cat, by the way. But yeah, it was actually it was quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, I really liked it. It's surprisingly robust for a fighting game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, and I was thinking what you had said, you and Faye, how people complain about there being too many of the, whatchamacallit, Fire Emblem?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, though, because they have every character from every previous game, and in the other games, they always pick different Fire Emblem characters, which worked when there were only 2 or 3 of them, that then you have every one of them in there, and then, yeah, it kind of overwhelmed it a little bit. I was like, oh, yeah, that's why there's so many damn Fire Emblem characters. They did that thing. But, no, it was a lot of fun. I had a good time. I don't get to play a lot of fighting games with my friends because they're that thing that, they suck at it. Yeah. Most of my real life friends, they're they're not good. they're bad.
I am always open for more smashing.
Mm-hmm. It was a lot of fun. Even the duo stuff. Once we figured out where it was, because there's only like 5 billion different places that you can find modes for that in that game. But that was fun. I had a good time.
Other than that, I've been playing a bit of Tetris 99.
How is that?
It's both incredibly enjoyable and incredibly infuriating. I did make it to the top 10. I got up to 7th, and then I watched Sinvicta, one of the other guys on Twitch that I watch play video games, and he actually got first place. And I realize now, having seen how quickly the blocks come down in the top 3, that I am never going to get first place.
Yeah, I need to try. Was that free or was that a pay thing?
Yeah, it's free.
I might need to try that because I've been playing Apex, which is also free, but it's another battle royale, but it's not Tetris battle royale, which is a weird concept when you really think about it. I need to try that.
It is, but it works surprisingly well.
Yeah. I used to be really good at Tetris. I think my highest was like 111 lines before I bombed out. Yeah. Which, funny enough, comes in handy later in life.
And then I met all these other people in Tetris 99.
Nerds. Yes, Indigo Jules. It's a Tetris Battle Royale. It's literally, you play Tetris with, 99 other people, I'm assuming, is the 99? Yep. So, give it a try. All right. Well, Straffe, what about you? Did you have anything?
Yeah, I got a short story for when we were all sick. It was like a Vengeance Day kind of little story, a.k.a. Valentine's Day for ESO.
Go for it.
All right. Trath went about his workshop, placing the finishing touches of a particular dubious battle trophy in preparation for his betrothed's Vengeance Day. He had recovered the long, corroded metal rod from her half-brother's corpse and reshaped it. With his forge, the shaped rod was now mounted to a finely crafted Altmer oak frame with brass fixtures extending it outward from the base. A wolf hide was placed under the frame to fuse the 2 different styles into an elegant yet rugged meld, not unlike the pair themselves. Lastly, he tacked on a small silver leaf to the center of the plaque, upon which was engraved, "I am thankful this Vengeance Day for the adversary that drove you from your home and into my arms, Trathalus Silverleaf." He smiled as he ran his finger over the engraving, then inspected the rod he had reshaped into a heart. A short time later, he had it hanging on the mantle above the fireplace at the villa. Later on, he shifted his attention to the grilled salmon, trout he had prepared, laying each plate out along the bare rug with a plate of sliced cheeses and breads and sautéed mushrooms, along with a bottle of mead with 2 pairs of glasses. It was all ready, and as he lit the last candle, he saw a pale orc walk through the door. He smiled just so as she looked around at the trap she had just walked into, and then she grinned. The end!
The end.
Short and sweet.
And sweet, yep.
All right. So, what I have is actually from, like I said last week, I left the servants of the tribunal, but I did do one last journal entry for Tarvala. Well, I did do a little role play this week. It was mostly just the one day on yesterday with Jazz, and frankly, there wasn't a ton that happened that was really noteworthy. So, go ahead and just read this. See if I can remember what she sounded like. Just have to pardon me because I'm not a woman, so it doesn't really always sound like one. Nor probably should it, much to the joy and astonishment of my wife. So, hello, Mr. Journal. It's been a long time, and sadly, this is the last time. I'm moving on from the Abbey, taking the rank of commander on the front lines in Cyrodiil. It's a battle promotion, really, not like the kind of commander Roger or Lilel was. It's where I feel I'm needed, though, and apparently so does the ordination, as it came from outside the Abbey. Now that I think of it, hopefully not the same swit that thought Commander Chatterill Wick would be a good fit here in Stonefalls. That choice did not end well. I'm gonna miss this place. It's been my first home, you know. Of course you know, Mr. Journal. I've told you everything. I've come so far from that silly little shy girl that failed at the clergy training and was mercilessly picked upon and teased. I was raw and battered, like a wilting flower on the road that had been trod on repeatedly. It was no longer a road still once I got here. Or it was a longer road still once I got here. Lashings, workouts, hours upon hours of training. I was cultivated and nurtured, and went from a wilting flower to a sturdy rose, full of strong stems and a lot of thorns. So many people along the way to get me here. I found family and friends, even a few enemies and rivals here. They all played their part in the woman I have become. I stand up straight now, my full height of 6'2", without slouching. I wear what I want to, even if it is flattering to the figure and draws the eyes. I can call down fire and lightning and open a portal to anywhere in Morrowind with the snap of my fingers and the whisper of will. Face off against the strongest men with sword in hand and be the one left standing, all because of them. But now, my father once told me, there are two kinds of death. There's the death we all know, the death of the body, the inactivity of the brain, the failing of the heart, and the loss of life's blood. That death, he said, comes to everyone, but there is another, far worse death. It's the death of comfort, the death of complacency. It is the death of the mind and of the spirit. It's the death of merely existing until the true death comes. But those that die this death welcome true death, for with this death it comes to them every day upon waking. See, those that die of comfort and complacency are still alive, true, but they do not live. They exist, floating around town like ash on the wind, going to do the same thing every day without fail, no longer growing, no longer learning, only existing. Mere existence is not living. Existing is something anything can do. A rock, a river, a tree. Existing is easy. Living is much harder. I feel, should I stay, I will only be existing. That all my knowledge and skills will stifle and atrophy, and that I'll no longer be living as I have been here these years, but only existing, dying day after day. And I am far too young and far too pretty to die so easily. So I must go. No big farewell. Those I needed to speak with, I have spoken with, or left instructions for. In time, few, if any, will remember me, but the mark will always remain, even if silently. My wagon is waiting now, though, and my time has come to put away childish things, even you, Mr. Journal. You've been dear and sweet friend to me all this time. I could not have done this without you. So, for the last time, Goodbye, Mr. Journal. So that was my last journal entry for her.
Aw, well, maybe you'll start it up again if you find another place for her. You never know.
No, it's true. It could be. But for now, she's going to be on the shelf. It was fun while it lasted, but unfortunately, all things in roleplay, nothing can last forever. It really can't. No matter how much we think it will in the moment and we want it to, no, everything has to end sooner or later. For one reason or another, which we'll go into one day. I think I finally figured out how to do an episode. I found the root of really what sucked the fun out of that. And spoiler alert, I think it was political correctness, which is a bane to the existence of all people, no matter your political affiliation. But that's just me. So that'll be a topic for another day. But for today, we're going to go into plots. We're going to plot. We're going to do some plotting plotness that ever plotted a plotting plot. Because I know we've talked about stories and things like that before, but given that we're going on our third year now, if you can believe that, getting into the weeds is definitely something we're going to have to do a lot more of. And while this might be something you probably covered at parts in like high school literature and writing, I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't remember a lot from high school, let alone before high school. So it's always good, or college even. So these kinds of things, there's definitely a ebb and flow to plot development, especially even in roleplay. I mean, it is literally just writing. There's not that big of a difference. It's just kind of group writing, social writing, I suppose you could just call it. I don't really think there's really a term for it, but
it's more like improv theater that you're writing down. So yeah.
Yeah. So, and because of that, there's still, all those same trappings and things like that still work exactly the same. The typical plots, the beginning, middle, end, the climax, the twists and turns, if you're M. Night Shyamalama Lama.
Old Shamalama.
Old Shamalama Lama.
I'll tell you what, man, the story arc I did for ESO, I literally just had some ideas, wrote them down, just like you're writing a paper. The rising action, the climax, the falling action, and I put little blips between those spots, wrote it down, and said, well, if it goes this way, great. If not, I'll adapt it to how the players reacted to what happened in this step. But yeah, plot, it does take some thought, and it is fun to change it based on what your friends, how they react to what just happened in the storyline.
Yeah, which is kind of the differentiation between, if you're writing a story or a book or whatever for yourself, as opposed to doing it in roleplay. Because, given we still kind of know the direction and twists and turns it will probably take, but there are times where it will go completely off the rails, and then you just have to adapt to that. But at the same time...
And in our case, you have to do it live!
Do it live!
Well, I will say, as someone who is a writer, who works on a book, has a book finished, although not published, it actually works the same way when you're writing. I have an outline. That outline has changed a dozen times. But you start off, you write, you get to know the characters that you're writing about, you've developed them already. You throw them into the story, and sometimes it just doesn't work the way you think it's going to. And so you have to go back and go, why is this flat? This is why it's flat. Right. So then you adjust it. So even if you are a writer, your stories, what your characters can choose in a way where it goes. So in many ways, writing and roleplay are far more alike than I think I would have believed before I went into this improv situation that I roleplay as. Because as a writer, I already knew that part, but I did not know how much I would enjoy and how challenging it is to create and run a story with other people. It's intoxicatingly fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very true. So before we go into it further, let's go ahead and go to our call line and go to Indigo Jules, who is waiting. How's it going, Indigo?
Hello. Hey there.
It's an Indigo.
Now you're working. That sounds good.
Yay.
Yay.
So what's up, Indigo? What can I do for you?
I'm just here to give my thoughts on the roleplay story element.
We are here for your two copper, bro.
Best part about roleplay with stories is being dynamic. Because my personal experience is there's two types of roleplay stories, fixed and dynamic. Fixed is essentially, it's a quest. It's a quest. You're just along for the ride. Maybe at this point or that point, you'll be able to get your 2 cents in, and everyone just keeps going. It's fixed.
Sounds like scripted roleplay.
Yeah, the scripted roleplay where somebody's DMing it, and no matter what you guys do, it's still probably going to end the same, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And dynamic is just everyone can change it, and so it's got to be changed and reforming, and the hardest part is trying to mix the two. Like, you have a goal in mind and stir this herd of very angry cats toward it.
Yep.
That is not the first time I know we role players have been referred to as herding angry cats. That is for sure. Yeah, because then on top of that, you have to balance the ones, the spotlighters that are always trying to take, be in the center of everything, because really you can't have somebody be in the center the entire time, because otherwise everybody else gets bored around them, and that's no fun.
This past week, just a regular event in my guild is my character rolled a 1 on a defense, and so that just meant it hit, and I actually had it go past his armor just a little bit, so he's now bleeding.
Yeah.
And so then I had to react as how my character would react. Okay, he just did something really stupid and got stabbed. How's he going to react to this? Not well.
Yeah, and you got to figure out if he would get angry or pissed off at himself, or if he'd blame somebody else, that kind of, depending on who your character is.
Yeah, he got in trouble because after the thing that attacked him was dead, he kind of ripped its head off and threw it to his guar.
Shameful.
And it kind of belonged to a sort of very close person to it was a traitor, and so it was just supposed to be their kind of dynamic event, and my character just goes, "Fuck this buddy!" Mm-hmm. Yeah, no respect. And you're just going, what's the matter with you guys? If we captured them, they'd be drawn and quartered.
Yeah.
Indigo does bring up a good point. Like, the way I DM pen and paper is the same way I kind of do arcs. You have to mix dynamic and static. You have to be willing to let your buddies change the course of where they want to go. And you can still bring them back to where you want it to end up. But sometimes you got to allow them to get in the weeds.
Yeah, let them get off the fairway and get out there into the bushes and take a couple swings in the sand, and maybe go swim out in the water hazard, play with the crocodile, that kind of thing. And then you're like, okay, you're still supposed to be hitting towards the flag, guys. Come on, hit the ball towards the flag.
The road is fun, but sometimes mud feels good between the toes.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a good. Yeah, and like that thing with you tearing the head off. Would you probably have done that if you hadn't gotten stabbed?
Nope.
Yeah. So you just kind of have to go off the reactions. And that's the kind of dynamic storytelling that, roleplay always gives, which is why it's so much damn fun. But at the same time, you then have to take the, consequences for your guy losing his shit. And as long as you're willing to do that, you can lose your shit all day long.
Oh, yeah. And I had to make nice with this pleasant little noble person who apparently had never seen gore like that, and so was throwing up in the corner.
Well, I mean, they're noble. Do you really have to? I mean, you don't really have to.
And he kind of made up a really bad pun afterwards, and he didn't mean to do it.
Oh, is the
You're
pun?
good. You're a good kid. You got a good head on your shoulders. And then he stops and goes, "I didn't mean it like that."
Yeah. No pun intended. Yeah, because nothing says "oops" like saying "no pun intended." But yeah, that's kind of how this whole thing. It's what we'll be going more into. But you get an overall story arc, and you can go typically they go by event. It builds and builds and builds. Each event is almost like a chapter, and maybe even the times when people gather between events when they're talking about it, it's a separate sub chapter or things like that. And then once whoever's controlling it, or if it's multiple people controlling it, you really just have to go with the flow of it. And if there is an end result, that's the great thing about writing a lot of times too, is you can, there's so much wiggle room that you can then steer, herd your cats back towards the direction of the putting green, and once it starts getting closer and closer to the hole, then you just start taking smaller swipes at it, and before you know it, it's over, and hopefully everybody's done it.
You have arrived at your location.
Or use Mage Light, and the cats will follow it.
That's right. Yeah, the
Mage Light.
The magical pointer of cat.
Yeah, that actually happened in, the ability that's, I think it's a healing sphere. It kind of looks like Mage Light when it's
that
it's an ultimate, and I know someone who had never seen that before and started chasing it in their Khajiit.
Oh, jeez.
It's done in character, so it looks like the cat's chasing the light.
That's awesome. Yes, it's always fun when people like, oh, hey, it kind of looks like a laser pointer. So, no, it's a very good point, especially with the herding cats analogy, especially, because you just never... you just don't know where people are going to go, and especially with you get some characters are so far out there, and almost all of them are damaged in one way or another, so it's pretty unpredictable. And then getting everybody lassoed back into it and making sure that the plot is coherent and fun, more importantly than even that.
Gotta have the fun.
Yeah, that's where all the planning and forethought, because you can always tell the difference between somebody that has planned, has an idea, has a plan. I have a plan. Follow the plan. For anybody playing Red Dead
even if the
Redemption
plan is
2.
horrible.
Yeah, but if you've put enough thought into it, you can always tell the difference between somebody that's done the legwork and done their homework and knows the lore and has a decent motivation for whatever is going on, as opposed to somebody that just comes in and they're just like, I thought it would be fun to have rogues attack them, and these rogues are also assassins that are ninjas and vampires. Go.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, it's
been there.
You're cute.
Yeah,
Still a better love story than Twilight, though.
yes.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, naturally.
One of the things that I've personally broken down, because I'm trying to work on a review, and I've never really done a review before, but I've broken down the 3 good things in a story, and it's 3 conflicts: the personal, the political, and the environmental.
Mm-hmm.
Personal reason why the character is motivated, the conflict that's framing that, and then the environment around it. So in this book, it's, I don't like this thing, and then there's the conflict between the 2 peoples, and then there's a drought, which is drawing the 2 peoples together.
Yeah.
So it's just 3 different levels of conflict that just shows it's a different chain. There's no real good guys and bad guys, and that's the best kind of story for me, where it's all subjective.
Yeah, like the Magneto Xavier thing. Magneto really doesn't think he thinks he's doing something noble and for mutant kind, and the ends justifies the means kind of a thing.
He's just being a realist.
Right. Yeah. He does it's the best bad guys are the guys that don't see them as, they're not the Skeletors and the Cobra Commanders, where it's like, we're evil because we're evil. Yeah, it's we get it. You're evil because you're evil. We got it. You're also boring.
In some ways, the Empire from Star Wars can be both at the same time.
Yes, it can. Well said, sir.
Yeah, and that's one of the
higher
great
ups are
things
just
about
cackling, ha ha ha, evil laugh, evil laugh. And
yeah,
the
but
guys on the ground
even
are
then,
just
when you really, especially if you get into the more of it even outside the movies, his motivation wasn't so much the dark. Of course, there was the dark side, which lets you know it's pure evil, but it was the totalitarian control of everything. He thought he was bringing control and peace to the galaxy instead of this chaos of the Republic and squabbling this and that. So it's the same thing with Thrawn. He thought he was just bringing order to everything. That's what he wanted. It was to bring order out of chaos. And the only
common
way to
people
do
in the middle
that,
had few job opportunities. Hey, join the Empire. I can at least get paid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's almost a greater evil to the common man.
If you were human.
If you're human, yes.
As long as you were human, and unless you were Thrawn and you were like out of the universe.
If you weren't
brilliant.
human, you had to be like genius tier to get a job.
Yeah, which is the other thing that, which is also kind of a fun thing when you get into stuff like that, which shows that sort of totalitarian control over everything. Typically, it has there has to be an enemy. In the case of Nazi Germany, it was the Jews. All those evil Jews. They're controlling everything. That's why we got to get rid of them. In Star Wars, it's aliens. Anybody not human, those aliens. They're taking our jobs and they're using our resources and this and that, and they're not as smart or intelligent or good looking, unless you're a Twi'lek, as humans.
yes, I agree.
I don't know what it is about head tails, but come on, they're hot.
It's pretty hot. If you do look at the other side, like when I started playing SWG, I started looking at the other side because I joined the Empire. When I go back and watch the movies now, I'm like, wow, these guys, these rebels, their ends are good. They just murdered I don't know how many people that were working on the Death Star. Are they really the good guys? I mean, this is kind of some terrorist stuff going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're the rebellion. They're they're the terrorist group. But
one
you
person's
can also
terrorist is another person's freedom fighter.
Yeah, well,
there's that.
You could look at it in the veins of history of the Empire is old England and old Britain, and the rebels are the American colonies. To England and Britain, the American colonies were just a bunch of terrorist groups,
Yeah.
And they just trying to break away from the king, and, given the king was also awful, but he wasn't dark side awful, at least. I don't think he was shooting electricity, but I don't know.
If he had only, taxed us and gave us representation, I think it would have ended totally different, but hey.
Yeah, if he hadn't been such a dick
those colonies are quite the cash cow.
But, yeah. Well, I guess we gotta get back on this, but appreciate you calling Indigo. You got anything in Indigo? Wow, tongue twister.
That's Indigo, else? Bro.
Yeah,
shut up, stupid.
Indigo Jules.
Yeah, who is a dude?
Yes,
dude.
Dude.
Another insight would be the story of the Expanse from both the TV show and the books.
I'm just now about 3/4 the way through the first book of that, and I never watched the TV show, but seeing the TV show made me listen to the book. So I'm working on that. So no spoilers.
This isn't a spoiler.
Okay.
It's just the setup. It's 3 different governments: Mars, Earth, and the people in the asteroid belt.
Yeah.
And Earth is so overcrowded that most of the population is actually unemployed.
Okay.
They
sounds like Blade Runner.
They haven't mentioned much about Earth yet. So far, I'm at the part where Earth is not in it yet.
Yeah,
but I know that won't last.
Yeah, it's just, and it's just called basic assistance, and it's essentially unemployment.
Mm-mm.
And it gives them enough for food, water, and a little bit of spending money, and that's about it. And so later in the show, you actually see it, and it's okay. This isn't as good. But the Martian people see that as they're lazy. They don't want to work.
Right.
When
really
Earth
it's more like
has 10 billion people living on it.
Yeah, when really everything looks more like the beginning of WALL-E. Just trash everywhere and everything's in shit.
And the people in the belt are just trying to get by from day to day. So each of these people has a unique view. And so trying to think of that in a story is a real big challenge.
Yeah, well, and that's something that people have a hard time, that even just on a day-to-day basis. People in America, they see other countries different. Other people in other countries see... I mean, one of the most dumb... just to prove a point through the most idiotic thing possible, I saw a thing like Europeans or other countries can't believe Americans put this on their popcorn. It was melted butter.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently, in other countries, putting like melted butter on your popcorn is this big, like, really? Ooh,
It's
gross.
a faux pas?
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, what do you guys put on it? And they're like, it was just either regular, just salt by itself, which, I mean, okay, if you're going to be healthy about it. Or and one of the other things was like sugar or cinnamon, and things like that. And I was like, yeah.
Those are actually
Oh my lord. Do not touch your tea if you are in Europe. Just don't do it. They serve you tea, just drink it like it is. No sugar, no cream.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that you can add like cream and milk and stuff because Gavin from the Slow Mo Guys, I listened to him on the Rooster Teeth, and he's always making fun of American milk because he says it's your flavored sugar milk is because they get it's unpasteurized, I guess, where he was at over in England. So over here he drinks our milk from Walmart. He's like, it just tastes like a bunch of sugar. So he doesn't add it to his tea, but over there he's always talks about adding dairy as he calls it add dairy to the tea. But it's just
I've actually had unpasteurized milk. Used to live next to people who had cows, and so just, hey, can we have some? Sure.
Oh, it's so much better.
Yeah, it's actually I found it rather sweet.
Mm-hmm. I've never had it, but I also know the reason we have to pasteurize it is because it would have about a 3-day shelf life.
Yeah.
So
there is that.
Actually, no, it lasts a long time. When
Science!
It's because the reason we pasteurize milk is because farmers were not washing their hands.
And also cows are disgusting.
And they weren't washing the udders, and so nasty stuff was getting in the milk.
Dookie.
That's why they did it. Nowadays, I mean, no hand touches the milk.
But even
so
still,
it's completely different.
Even modern the cows are disgusting creatures. I mean, yeah, okay, they're supposed to be smart, adorable. But they're
actually, if they're not in a pen wandering around in their own shit, they're actually very clean.
Yeah, but that's not how we do modern milk.
They're dirty on the open range farm. I've been there. So back to roleplay plots.
No, I want to talk more about cow pies.
All right, fine. Take it the dairy topic away.
But no, you're right, and it's finding. It's kind of like in the roleplay. A lot of people. I don't think a lot of people put too much thought into the difference of the races. So it's like, oh, everyone's equal and this and that. It's like, well, no, they're really not. I mean, especially in roleplay, yes, I get that. It's one of those real life things that people bleed over. And like, oh, the Dunmer aren't so bad. No, they're actually kind of all assholes. Yeah, they if you're gonna go off of what the lore should be, they pretty much just want to enslave everybody to their will. But
that actually brings up a good point where someone said the Ebonheart Pact didn't make sense.
It really doesn't. No,
it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. But if you play the storyline, including the new swamp area that came out, Murkmire.
Yeah.
You realize that it's mostly ex-slaves that have joined the Ebonheart Pact. The connected Argonians have just gone, whatever, we're staying here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they've always done in the lore. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always, and that's the other thing. You can technically always write your way around it, which is exactly what ESO did. But they just had to find some jackass way, and unfortunately, on that side of the map, the only people near them were Nords and Argonians. So it was kind of
speaking above the game.
And so then when you see. Play the game, you see they're being attacked from all sides. Like, I don't think there's one zone where another faction's not there trying to screw something.
Yeah.
And if you know how the lore is going to go, it's eventually, there's Argonians joined the Ebonheart Pact. Well, who's to say they weren't scouting it out? Because as soon as Red Mountain blows, they run in there and they slaughter the Dunmer.
Yeah, that's true. And as Insomniac says too, the Ebonheart Pact is more of a defensive pact than the others. Which are more.
Sorry, Indigo. Go ahead, bro.
And that's kind of how they get away with that. But
they're just on all sides, and so we're gonna die. How about we work together and then we can go back to
and then we can go back to enslaving one another. Yeah. You milk drinkers. But
And so you actually see them working together, and I think just the fact that there are shadow scales guarding King Yoren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually
that
cool.
Says, okay, we're putting a little bit of faith in this dude. This fire-bearded guy, and I actually have my Argonian think facial hair looks ishy.
Keep your friends close, your enemies closer, I'm just saying.
Although the Argonians getting along with the Nords makes a lot more sense than
it does.
Nords or Argonians, than anybody getting along with the Dunmer. I mean,
yeah,
that's where it kind of falls apart more than anything.
We're friends.
Yeah.
The irony is they got more in line with the Altmer, but the two can't stand each other.
No, it's like.
Oh, I see our dark cousins are around, worshiping Daedra today. No, yes. I see you're enslaving the Argonians. Where did you learn that habit?
Mm-hmm. But all right, well, I appreciate you calling in, Go. We got somebody else waiting too, and got to get to the rest of it. So appreciate you calling in. There, it's good to finally get to talk to you and have you on the show.
Good to get here. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem.
Thanks,
you have a good night, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, see ya.
All right. With that, let's go to our call line again, and go to make sure I got that unmuted there. Go to Manning Squared. How's it going, Manning? How you doing?
It's going well.
Good.
I wanted to talk to you guys about what you guys think of the reason for, or like, where should NPCs be limited? So, you know how in some games, like I play Star Wars: The Old Republic, as a lot of people do, but and I haven't found this much when I played ESO. It was more like player oriented in ESO, but in Star Wars: The Old Republic, there's so many people and so many worlds, you just kind of have to have NPCs for things like, you know, wars and droids and such. Well, some droids. Anyways, the thing I'm wondering is, what are your guys' opinions on, like, how limited these NPCs should be? Because I have some people that I know that are like, hey, I only like to take NPCs to a certain extent, or like maybe fake worlds and stuff like that. Stuff that's not exactly lore, but is totally plausible in the other sense as well. Not just NPCs, I mean, is like, you know, made up worlds in Star Wars: The Old Republic, or made up towns or something like that in other games. It's just, it seems like it's kind of a different issue for each person, and I'm wondering where you guys each stand on kind of like where you should stop with NPCs in a story, especially when it relates to like an inherent character part, like, you know, a father or a mother that is still technically alive or something like that.
We do touch on that later on in the outline, but basically you want to be very careful with filling up a storyline with NPCs. You can start off that way for background and building story, but if you can replace that NPC with a player at some point, that works best.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, people feel included. If you just roll a new character or as an NPC, or you have other people roll NPCs that you have complete control over, people feel like the storyline isn't random and they have no place. So it's really important to include as many players as possible and only have NPCs, in my opinion, for people that are going to die, for minions of the bad guy, that sort of thing.
Lieutenants and things.
Yeah.
Another thing too, something Kishmas did back in Servants was he had planned out a big like a big battle. Like it was like hundreds of Ordinators versus, you know, an NPC army that was coming at us, and all the players were also there, and we were all mounted, so we were kind of like our one little division, and we were fighting against the backdrop of all of the fighting going around us, and his roles kind of controlled the ebb and flow of the NPCs fighting each other, and then on a smaller scale, he scaled it down to just specifically us versus kind of invisible NPCs, because sometimes that's the best way to do. You don't want to bring in another guild at times for things like that, because somebody's going to lose, and then some. You know, we've gone over that. But when you just want to do a quick story, and well, in this case it wasn't quick, but he built up to it. He had a reason for where this other army came from. It was a lot of build up. He actually canceled it once because he wanted to redesign something. I mean, he took it real seriously. He put a lot of work into it. But then, on the smaller scale, we were fighting against NPCs that were invisible, which Servants does quite a bit. Most of the events, when they're fighting somebody, it's like an NPC kind of a fight. And for the most part, you're probably, everybody's probably going to get out of there alive. But depending on the rolls is where it gets like how tricky is it going to, how much difficulty is it going to be, how injured are everybody. There's even been a few times where the rolls went so badly they ended up having to retreat, and the NPCs technically won the day, so to speak.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah,
and I tend to agree with you guys where it's also like, it's only really necessary. You only really use it when necessary, when it's something like an enemy that's going to be killed, or a minor NPC that you'll probably never see again, or something like that. But I also tend to think that in some ways it's a good idea. Like, again, in the case of Star Wars, you have Sith that have these power bases with armies essentially at their command, right? You can't really have that many people, and the best thing you can do essentially is have people in certain spots to kind of represent them. So, like, if you have a player who's a sergeant and they don't really want to be promoted higher,
right?
Higher and farther. Anyways, if you have a player like that, it's like, you don't really want to push them past their limits and be like, hey, you're a lieutenant, and that's just kind of not very nice. But it's also like, there's a bit of weirdness there with having a sergeant, but a good thing to do with that is what I've seen is like, have them in everyday circumstances or in the battles, as you said, right? You know what I mean? As maybe an escort for the higher ranks or something like that. You know what I mean? There's ways to get around that kind of thing, but I feel like there's some places where you can be a little bit, more liberal with it, where it's like, hey, I need this planet or this army, like you said, that's like opposing us because I don't really want to bring in another group or this or that, because it just happens with the lore. But I feel like it gets a little bit too far when it's something central to the character. You know what I mean? Something where they're interacting often enough to be like a little bit weird, just kind of being an NPC that's there all the time.
I think an NPC/player hybrid is going to be better in the long run. Your players are going to be more engaged for the simple fact, and I'll use the example of EverQuest 2 back in the day. Xanus did this dude called the Watcher. He always brought him out. We'd always build up a storyline to it. Everybody knew he was an NPC, but then he would play that character, and it made the story feel you were a little more invested into how it was going to turn out.
Yeah, because I would use the Xanus avatar, because I had all my cool outfits on it. And I could change the lighting and stuff around him, because EverQuest 2 let you do that stuff. So I would use his body as that villain, but the villain was separate from Xanus until one point where it wasn't. But
I got you.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to get your guys' general opinion on it and talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me on again.
No problem, man.
Thanks, bro.
I gotta get out of here. Okay. All right. See you guys later. Have a good night.
So, all right. Well,
that actually sounds like a topic.
Yeah,
it does.
NPCs.
Do.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for calling in. Again, RPMMORadio.com/Discord. If you join our Discord server, you'll see the caller waiting room. Just jump in there. We'll make sure your stuff works, and we'll get to you. We may not get to you right away, but we'll get to you. So, thanks for everybody for calling in. But
yes, thank you.
Go into the plots. So, kind of want to see here. So what does everyone really kind of see? Like, what do you consider a story and a plot? What's your favorite story arcs and things like that you may have created or had happen around you?
Well, I think mine has changed a lot, because in EQ2 we had 12 years and we had a decade story long RP arc. Right. And a lot of the Watcher storyline was 3 years, 2 years,
off and on,
2 or 3 years. It was a long storyline. The bastard never did get killed. I don't believe he did still get away. He's still technically out there.
I think
his spirit was still alive.
Right. He got separated from Xanus because it was
right, because
it was a part of him, but he ended up being exorcised, but
exorcise the demon.
Yeah.
But,
so I mean, those were
he was
really
kind of shuffled off.
long storylines, and I always wrote my storylines to last a long time, and I enjoyed that. It's probably not a coincidence that I've never written a short story. Ever. My shortest story was 300 pages long. My teacher was like, okay, let's just call it an excerpt and go back to the beginning. So I never really wrote for my short story classes. I never wrote short stories. I wrote excerpts because my teacher couldn't get me to write anything small. So I enjoy large, long, drawn out, don't even say it, long, drawn out storylines.
I don't know.
What, Jazz? Whatever could you mean?
No idea.
Shut up. Anyway, so...
You're so violent, Ashton. I mean, what's up with
she's
that?
just angry. That's,
really angry.
That's how women will do you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when I left EQ and ventured out into other games, particularly in Tor, Guild Wars was still a long story arc. That still lasted 2 years. But in Tor, the attention span of the general public was 2 days. So it became necessary to shorten things to keep people's interest. And I would take part in other people's stories. And while a small group of friends and we had this really complicated, long plot that is still not over, even though we don't play the game anymore, the majority of the public, we had to come up with things for them to participate in that were short. And I got better at it. And now in ESO, I have the same problem. People do not have the attention span for a long story.
Well, and
so
part of that too is it's the attention spans, but it's also the shelf life of MMOs these days. I mean,
well, that's true.
EverQuest,
that's true.
EverQuest
Most people
1,
play for 6 months to a year, and then they move on.
Whereas back in World of Warcraft days, and EverQuest 2, and EverQuest, and some of those early MMOs, there was only half dozen, a dozen of them that were worth. I mean, there were more, but that were worth playing for that length of time. And these days, they kind of pop them out left and right. I mean, shoot, there's like 3 of them that were just announced on mobile that actually look halfway decent. I'm not going to play them because you point and click and it kind of auto runs to the next thing. But there's still 3 of them even on mobile. These coming out this year alone, and that's mobile. So I think people's attention spans. You get a guild like the Servants was that had been around for 5 years. That's a rarity.
That's a long time,
especially in ESO, which really had a really rocky start. But that kind of evolves how, like you said, it's not just their attention span. It's just how long the damn people will even be around.
Yeah. As to your question,
hard. Yeah.
I agree with Jazz. The Watcher thing was great because it melded. If you were interested, if you're really interested in it, you could actually get your roleplay evolved and tack onto the bigger story, which is what happened with my character. And I loved it because I'm like, hey man, we get to see what happens next week. Since I'm now a new factor in it, is he going to do something with me? Is he going to do something with the Zod? Whatever, didn't matter. But it kind of included everybody at some point. If you were interested, put the time in. I'm digging this new ESO thing, which I'm going to be back to this week, coming up. But years of roleplay and you don't think about it until you step back and you go, my goodness, we've been roleplaying this thing for 3 years, or however long it was. That was a great arc.
Yeah, exactly. And in the span of it, it just flies by.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course I was part of it. The Witcher one was a lot of fun. There was Watcher. The Witcher is a lot lot of fun, but
it was the Witch Watch.
Yeah, that's right.
Witch Watch.
The Witcher Watch. But no, that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of subplots. The plots I had with people we've lost touch with, like Vinka and Shard and the Vagabond Knights. Back in the day when I was with them, was always a lot of fun. The stuff with Servants, they didn't have. They didn't really have overarching plots, though. Theirs was really more of an episodic, almost like a week to week, maybe month to month. There were a few longer ones, but there was never there was never real big ones. They typically started, they would last a few months, and then it would be done, and then something new would start. But
they had the Star Trek episodic RP thing going,
or like season, almost episodic and then seasonal. Like the thing would last for 5 or 3, 5, 6 months, and then that season was over, and a new season would kind of start after that had very little to do with the previous season, kind of like The Walking Dead does, other than the fact that characters die off. They're a long ass way from the barn and the prison at this point, and there's lions and a talking skeleton or scarecrow or something, and there's a Tin Man and a Cowardly Lion. I've not watched the last 2 seasons of Walking Dead. Frankly, it got really boring.
The last one I've gotten to, completely off topic. They're in a much darker place. I know the new season's out right now, but I gotta wait till it comes out on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm at that point with Walking Dead where I'm like, it's not Game of Thrones level anymore. Where like I'll watch Game of Thrones week to week as it comes out.
Yeah,
but I'm done with Walking Dead until the whole season comes. But yeah, I enjoy both of them. I need a mix of it. I like the longer story arcs, the overarching character drama and the ins and outs and stuff like that. But I did really enjoy like the weekly kind of small scale events that were more of an episodic thing, like Servants had. They were fun. I think I got burnt out on them being multiple a week. I think was a little too much for me, because eventually it's kind of like
that was really hard, because if you had any other guild that you were a part of, they had something every single day. Mm-hmm. So you either took part in all of them or none of them.
Yeah, you missed out.
If you tried to just be there for some of them, you got the feeling that they didn't.
They took it personally. Yes.
Yes, well, because you weren't there for what's his name, so he won't. He won't.
So what's his name won't come for yours. Yeah.
Right.
Which is
and it's like, but that's not.
Happens.
People are gonna have other. I have 4 kids and a job. I can't come in and be in some complex thing every single day. I just can't do it, even if it was my only guild.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding that, actually, for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you think that has to do with the evolution of MMOs and storytelling, and the fact that younger generations than us can multitask better than us? We're old, is what I'm saying.
Well, no, I mean, I can see that that's part of it, but at their attention, I don't mean to put the us and them thing. But
she's right. There's a lack of attention span. They're a lot younger. They got more time to burn. They don't have as many responsibilities as we do, and maybe we are just old.
Oh yeah, I don't mean it in a bad way.
It's you got RP events going on way into the night. You're like, dude, I got to work at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, I gotta go.
But then again,
bye.
But then again, back when we were in EverQuest 2. Jazz, you were the one up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. But
I was up until. But I also knew that, like you and other people had jobs.
Yeah,
and I had to have that. We had to be done. We called it prime time, as you remember.
Right. Oh no,
we had to have any event done by 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and then there was there was a very large after hours crowd where
huge
I would
RP things going
I would
on
come in on the next day and it'd be like, oh, this happened last night. I'm like, what the fuck did you guys do? Wait till I logged out. But it would happen organically because it was the characters and people. It was. Frankly, a lot of it was the spotlighters were like, oh, look at me, oh, I'm going to be angry.
And it was also because a lot of them were Pacific. And we had a lot of people that were on, at...
Yeah, there was that too.
That were Eastern.
Time zones
and then
are the
Centrals,
worst.
You were Central. And then we had the Pacific Coasters who didn't even go to bed, didn't even start talking about going to bed till midnight. My time.
Their time, which is 2 o'clock.
Their time was 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's 10 o'clock. Their time is midnight for me, and it was like, well, basically nothing really started a lot of times until midnight because a lot of the late nighters would get on.
Yeah, and then you go from the East Coast to the West Coast. It's 3 hours. It's 10 o'clock there. It's 1 o'clock in the morning over on New York and the East Coast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the time time zones make a huge difference in the play.
Indigo
schedule.
Jules said in the chat. Wow, this would not be a person I think any of us would have gotten along with. I do someone who would get pissy if RP's story took longer than a day.
Yeah, and I have had
Could
people
do
tell
that.
me that in this game, in ESO, that why are we taking so long to develop the story? It should be over by now. And it's like,
I've heard
well,
that too. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but this is a long, involved story. Well, I just can't be bothered, and, granted, they left the guild not long after because there was
Right.
no RP, which the irony seems to have escaped them.
Right.
But
You guys are taking
nevertheless-
too long to do your stories. I'm not going to participate. I can't stay in this guild because there's no roleplay going on.
Right. Makes my brain hurt. But, I mean, that's just a personal preference. But I've noticed that personal preference exists in people between the ages of 17 and 28.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, too, what you were asking, Yunfei, I think, yeah, the like had just said, with people don't have the attention span of staking. It's not even, I don't think it's attention span. Just there's just so many MMOs out there. They bounce around to them.
My kid plays
Yeah.
like 10 different games. I'm just like, I can't even imagine playing that many games actively.
Yeah, like I personally cannot multitask like that at all.
No, I can't
Yeah.
either.
See,
I
and
have
that's-
to be able to focus on a game, and I just can't even imagine. But my kids, I have a kid. He wants me to pay for ESO and Tor, and it's like,
Right.
okay, first of all, these all cost money. Second of all, you do not have a job.
Second
Third
of all, both of those are free to play, so you're going to be playing for free. You're just going to have to
so you're going to
deal
be paying
with it.
for free, and I'm not going to, because I learned the hard way. I paid for ESO because he was really, really wanted to play it because he saw me playing it, and so I went ahead and just bought a year for his account because it's a hell of a lot cheaper.
And how many
And
days
he has
did
only
he pay
played
that?
like 5 times,
Right.
Since I did that, and I'm just like beating my head on the wall because I'm just like, oh, why did I do that?
Mhm.
So yeah, lesson
Yeah, but the thing what you said about them being good at multitasking, though, it made me think: Are they really? Because if they're trying to role play in the game, but they're also multitasking and they're on their phone and they're on a second screen or they're alt tabbing out. Are they really? I mean, the part
to
of the
me,
reason
I don't feel that's multitasking. They're just easily distracted.
Right, that's the thing. But that's in their mind. Oh, I'm not distracted. I'm multitasking. I can do this and do this at the same time, and this and this and this at the same time. It's no big deal. But how much nuance and things like that are they missing because they look up the screen? And I fell into this trap. And given there's certain things that I will definitely be on my second screen watching videos of. Thanks, for example, singing and poetry stuff because it's not my thing. I don't like reading music, and I think everyone knows my hatred for almost all things poetry, unless your name is Edgar. That's about it. I think I like Edgar. He's pretty good.
Edgar Allan poetry.
Poetry, yeah, that'd be the one. I appreciate Ed's stuff, but that's also more in the form of a story and not just Oh, and Shel Silverstein. I did like him. I guess that's technically poetry.
Oh, rock on.
Yeah, but again, that was different. So if it's poetry that's meant for adults, like older adults, and it's a horror based or 10 years and younger, that's my poetry tolerance right there. It's very specific, but while they're doing all that stuff, I don't really they're not paying the attention that you probably need to. You have to pay a certain amount of attention because I know if I start getting distracted over here, unless it's one-on-one, I'm not paying that. I'm not paying any attention really because I just can't. And I don't think, and they're younger and all that's well and good, but the human mind can still only process so much. It's why you can't hear every conversation in a crowded room. You walk through it and you hear a general murmur, and you might pick up bits and pieces of individual speech as you're walking by, but you can't hear every conversation at once because the mind is not capable of multitasking on that level. And you start splitting up into 2 and 3 and 4 different
And I think
tasks.
that's why
all
they
at once.
That's why they want to do, one day. They don't want to think about it beyond that. They don't want to read on a forum. They don't want to research anything. They just want to go do it and be done and move on to the next interesting thing because they are used to that in pop culture. I think that's all they know. It's all they think of.
Yeah. I actually like Azure LA in the chat said, I certainly think they did it without
how that went?
They did it without the stutter and stumbling because they probably know how to what's that word? Oh yeah, read. And speak. I certainly think you have to keep them engaged. If people are just sitting there being lectured to, then chances are most of them are tabbed out, which I will say is very true. There are there's certain things in servants. Certain people would do things like a history lesson, and some people were really good at it. Like Nathala, I loved because the way she would present it was in the form of like stories. It wasn't just copy and pasting out of a wiki. Other people, it was basically giving you the Wikipedia information, very cut, very dry, very textbook. And and if there's no interaction with the audience listening, then I would go to it because I kind of felt obligated at times, and I would think I was interested, and I'd start reading, and then I'd be like,
no.
Oh, hey, look, girlfriend reviews is up. I'm going to click on that. Hold up a minute. So, but if there was when somebody would do a training thing, like how to do magic or portals or something like that was interactive where you actually had to do something, those I stay engaged in all day long. Because I'm role-playing.
I'm not folks reading. Did it better than others. You did a really good one. Somebody else, another one of the drill instructors, did it well, and then the rest of them were kind of just, hey, do this, run around, suck it up. And it got dry really quick.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes into what it took for plot. You can tell how much thought somebody put into a thing beforehand. Yeah, and those ones that you're talking about, they were typically someone's like, "Hey, I'll do it," but then came 5
I'm just going through the motions instead of making it interesting.
I didn't come up with anything, so I'm just going to go off the top of my head and like, okay.
And I think that's the danger of doing we must have something every day, get busy and make stuff up. If you're doing it that fast, you're not taking time to research, to think, to find out the lore, to make sure it ties in, to talk to other people about their ideas so that you can maybe tie more than one event together into more than one thing.
Mm-hmm.
In an effort to make it more engaging, the arc that I'm working on in ESO, I literally made the character the bad guy and made him a PC because, it'd be fun to keep people engaged. Oh, we're not just going to kill the NPC and the story's over. No, this guy's going to show up and pretend to be somebody else, and you may never know it. You may know it above the game.
Right.
But that makes the players always like, who is it today? Is this really the guy we're talking to?
Yeah. What's up, Rohanar? You said you had a comment?
I do. Actually, it's a comment and a question. The question first. Being realistic, how many people here can you honestly say that when you were role-playing back in the day, in EQ2, ESO, wherever you were role-playing, and the person you were role-playing with was taking a good amount of time between posts, you were not doing something else?
I was definitely not. Mostly because my computer couldn't handle it back then.
I will say, I was mostly probably on Discord talking to my friends going, dude, this guy is a slow typer and I'm getting annoyed with this guy.
Well, yeah, back in the day, honestly, a lot less. I think for the same reason as you'd say.
Everybody had crappy computers, right?
Right.
Yeah, but the computers couldn't handle that sort of thing back then. So if you had a slow typer, you might be in tells with somebody, but you're still got the screen right in front of you. As technology got more so, I do tab out, but because and Ashley's gonna hate this, I type fast and I read fast.
Holy crap! You don't
really?
So if I tabbed out, then when I typed back, I could easily catch up and then just type, and nobody could tell.
It would,
but a lot of people tab out and don't tab back. Oh, sorry, I got distracted.
Yeah, see, for me, it depends. Like if I was role playing with Jazz, no. Because I know how fast she types, or certain, basically almost anybody here at this point. Sibby's was very slow at the start, but she's a fast typer now, so it's not really a problem.
Yeah.
It used to irritate me too because he would tab out on me, and I'd be sitting there just waiting.
And that's when I was like, oh, that's a shit thing to do, but that's why I got a second monitor now, so I don't miss it.
Yeah.
But there are some people that if they were, I mean, there's some people that are just so crazy slow, or if they did it constantly, and sometimes you don't know if they're actually typing slow or if they're having a whole nother conversation in their guild, group, or tells.
Yep. Yeah.
And typically, you know, like Jazz, when Jazz slows down, I know it's one of two things. She's smacking her kids.
I was about to say that, bro.
or she's somebody's complaining to her in tells or something like that. You know, and she's having to deal with that. And of course, because it's me, she knows I understand that.
But I still tell people I'm going to be a bit AFK when I can.
Yeah.
The only time that I don't is obviously if my son had a seizure and I have to run.
Right.
So if I'm gone for more than 5 minutes, you know something happened, or I would be there. I rarely just get distracted and don't come back to my screen for one reason or another.
Back in EQ1, I was role-playing with someone, and Sari, if you're listening to this, I'm looking at you. We were role-playing. He fell asleep on me. He got up to go to the bathroom, fell asleep on the couch. I had to call a GM to get them to kick his character off because we were two dark elves playing in the Fey Dark, and he kept getting attacked by the fairies.
Oh, no.
But yeah, he fell asleep on me.
Yeah, no, actually, you reminded me that, Yunfei, when you were saying that. I remember EverQuest 1, you couldn't tab out. Alt-tab was disabled.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a couple. It's only really been recently in like the last 10 years or so they've been like, oh, hey, maybe we should let people tab out.
Oh, the days of dial-up.
Yeah, but my computer couldn't have handled that until later. I could then, once I got a nice computer, then I could have 2 EQs up at the same time, and I was farming on one character and RPing on the other.
Mm-hmm.
But again, tab. It was easy to do, and I could keep track of the conversation. But
yeah,
I'm not saying that we don't do that. I'm just saying that when it's turning into I can't be bothered to pay attention to your storyline because it's not over in one day. That has to do more with this idea that if they're not entertained every second, then they're just not going to bother.
Yeah, that's
more
well,
an age thing.
that actually leads into the comment that I had there, which is as someone who Yunfei likes to affectionately call a bunny hopper or the bouncer during, for example, raids and things like that. I'm the person who's always alt-tabbed when people are explaining this.
Right.
I would constantly be in other windows when I was role-playing with people, just because I could not pay attention that long without falling asleep.
Drove me absolutely mental.
Yeah,
I swear. Because I'm focused on whatever the person is saying, whether it's a raid and they're explaining it, or, you know, we're role-playing in a tavern or something. I'm totally focused on it, and he's just like, you know, watching YouTube and stuff.
So the last comment I have there is actually kind of another question, kind of another comment, and that is, as you have grown older and wiser and better able to handle things like running a podcast and also doing other things like fishing. How you doing, Seb?
She sure ain't fishing, I'll tell you that.
Nope, she's not fishing. She's in Fallout right now, shooting stuff.
Oh, okay.
I'm not shooting anything.
Oh, okay.
I'm just.
Do you find that being older allows you to have that better attention span to do other things?
No, I think that it has to do more with like when I'm fishing, for example, I do things that I know that I can stop doing and not die.
Yeah, and don't take all your concentration, because
right.
There is
so
only
if
so
I'm
much you
double
can
tasking,
concentrate.
it's because, you know, I want something to do. You know, I have ADHD, so if I'm not doing something nervous, I get even more easily distracted. So it's better for me to have something to do, but at the same time, it needs to be something that I can pause or walk away from because the podcast is first. Or when I was roleplay was first. Mm-hmm. And if I was going to be distracted, then I couldn't do that one thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think one thing getting older has let you know more about that makes it easier to do that stuff is you've learned your limitations and you're willing to admit.
I would say that's probably fair right there. Yeah. I've
Like,
certainly learned my limitations versus otherwise.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I know if I'm in one-on-one role play and somebody is typing slowly, I can look over on a second screen and still keep track. If I'm at like as Jurelay said, if I'm at the tea house and I'm actually wanting to pay attention,
no,
I am reading the screen at the fucking tea house. Otherwise, I may as well not be there. I'm just a body taking up space because there's no way to pay attention to that crazy chat scroll without paying 100% attention. And there is you alt tab out or you look at a screen for 10 seconds and you've probably missed an entire screen's worth of dialogue. It's just but I know that now. I'm willing to admit it. I know a lot of times when you're young, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, they can be stubborn.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And you can't. You don't want to admit you have faults. Nobody wants to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's once you're kind of up there, you kind of figure it out.
I don't think that has anything to do with age, though, because a lot of old people are stubborn too.
Well, yeah, but they're stubborn, but they also know their limitations. You don't. I've got Mr. Mercer on my route who knows when his dog's trying to pull him over to see me and I give her a cookie and he drops it, that he can't bend over and pick the cookie up for her because she'll jerk and pull his whole ass over. He's a really nice guy. But, they're still stubborn, but they still know their limitations. I think there comes a point when you get old, you just get set in your ways, and then to everybody else, you're just doing what you've always done, but to everyone else, you're just being stubborn and not willing to change.
Being crotchety.
Yeah, which is a time period I vastly hope to reach any day now. Looking forward.
You're already there.
Shut up. Where's my dinner, woman? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go back to my hole now. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling the show, Ron. So, all right. Well, moving on then. So now we know what we all think of stories. How do you start to develop it? How much planning should you actually do? For me, I think it depends on the depth that, sometimes you think a story is going to be, this is going to be a long-winded story. It's going to be deep. And you're like, you start going into it. And you're like, it's about a pothole. It's about pothole deep. you know, and then there's sometimes it starts out something small, something very small and inconsequential. One of the things I've always loved doing in role play is I put out tangent threads, is what I kind of call them. They're just little threads. They're lines that may be said. They're ideas that are out there, but maybe they don't fit where they're at right now. So you kind of put it out there, and then later on something else happens. And you can tie that thread to the new storylines, and they bind together, and it sort of creates that overarching story, which is something you can do in roleplay if you really, you're willing to think these kind of things through.
As to the topic question, you literally got to plan. If you're going to make it a short little deal that everyone can get involved in, just keep it to that scope. If you want to do a big overarching story, you need to talk to people, see if they're on board for it. Plan it, drop an outline.
More of an outline with the possibility of changing as it goes.
Yeah, you have to be adaptable. You have to be.
You also have to be able to say, "Is this my story, or is this a group story?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you making it?
And don't, if it's your story, don't let somebody hijack it.
Yeah.
Let them know, hey, this is my story. This is how I want it to go. You're welcome to put input in, but I will decide whether I'm going to take it or not.
2 examples of good cooperation. When I started writing this big story, I asked Sibs, hey, is it cool if I do this? She's like, yeah. And then she asked me later, hey, I'm doing this thing with Voli. Is it cool if I use him as the architect behind the whole kidnapping thing? I'm like, sure. So then it added more richness to the bigger story, even though it was a smaller story. Again, the next example, I asked Jazz, hey, is it okay if her character used to be the bad guy's apprentice? She loved it. She went with it.
Mm-hmm.
But had I not asked her, that would have been totally wrong. I'd been hijacking some of her backstory.
Yeah.
And as it was, it lent to Cial's backstory in a really neat way. And I was like, actually, I had said that she had a... whoops, sorry about that. But yeah, I got to take this, guys. I'll be right back.
Go ahead.
It develops her character. She already had an idea. I'll just kind of fill in the blanks for her. She can straighten me out when she gets back. She already wanted to be kind of an assassin-trained wild child, and I said, "Why? Maybe you were a wild child because you were trained this way by somebody that was nastier in the Dark Brotherhood."
Mm-hmm.
And she's crazy because of a product of how she was trained, and she loved it. She took it and ran with it.
Yeah, kind of like at Kung Pao Enter the Fist. This is Wimpo. Exactly. We have been training him wrong as a joke. Yeah. How do you like my face to your foot technique?
Exactly. Love it.
Yeah, and that's those you have to be. If you get too, you can't be too rigid in the plot development because if something comes along, but you've got it all written out, it's all formatted, you've got it double spaced and all that stuff and spell checked, but you have to be able to weave in that, like, hey, I'm going to do a kidnapping thing. Is it cool if your bad guy was maybe behind it? And then you suss it out. Or, hey, Jazz, is it cool if maybe my bad guy did this, trained your gal at one point or another? And if you guys were both totally, if you, Strafe, being the guy that's in control of this bad guy NPC, so to speak, if you were like, no, it's got to be stuff I come up with, then
it's too rigid.
You would have lost out on two instances of what was actually a really fun role play, and really good story development, and it added to the overarching plot. So, and with that too. One of the things you have to do is come up with the overreaching or the theme of the story. Like what are you wanting out of it? Are you wanting characters to change? Is it for the guild? Is it for yourself, like we were saying? Is it for a small group? What is it? Is it assassination? What kind of, is it a horror story? Is it an adventure story? Is it a mystery? Where
in the case of the arc that I'm doing, it's a big guild RP thing where anybody can get into. It's going to develop a couple different characters. It's also going to have a surprising twist ending on it, and I'm going to leave it totally up to our players to decide what happens. Because the bad guy, exactly, the bad guy that everybody's hunting after, he's just using that body, and then they're going to have to wrestle the question as, do we just kill this guy even though he was taken over, or do we let him live, and what do we do with him after the fact?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah,
so
it's a moral.
And it should turn into a new story, and that's my hope. Someone else can take it and run with it.
A moral dilemma, which is also a good.
Exactly,
it's a good for, everything. Yeah, it is fun to do the cut and dry, black and white, good guy, bad guy, this kind of thing. But it's also fun when you do those. You watch it in a lot of the more complex shows like Babylon 5 or even SG-1 or a lot of these shows where the. Like Babylon 5, for example, one of the worst villains they had on that show was Bester, played by, Walter Koenig, who's, Chekhov in Star Trek. Oh,
yes.
And he's a bastard and an asshole, and he's clearly a bad guy. He's a villain. And they can't do anything about him but just get in the way and try to stop him, but they can't just kill him off. They can't just put him out an airlock or anything like that. They have to deal with him, and it creates a lot of moral dilemmas on them. Like, well, how do we stay true to our, we're still part of the same government and this and that. So how do we deal with this in a roundabout way? And it creates a lot of friction, a lot of real fun banter too, because he was a really good villain.
It makes for good moral dilemmas and for great, rich character development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the case of what's coming up,
hey, you just wait till it happens.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I got my mind. I just had a brain fart. Yeah, when it comes to what's coming up, it's kind of like I set it up to be like a Mass Effect choice. Hey, you can go this way, and I'll just change the story and hand it off. If you go this way, and I'll lead them more that way, and then still hand it off. Either way, it's going to be good role play.
Right. You're just more of a DM. You're not necessarily creating the story so much as just kind of poking and prodding and making sure it stays on track and coherent.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
I'm
and
I'm
that's a good
I'm
way
the
to do it.
steward of it until I hand it off to somebody else to go do something cool with it.
Yeah.
And I think it's better to do it that way instead of, hey, this is my story. It's mine. Oh, you don't want it to play? I'm taking my GI Joes and going home. It's like no one wants to play with that guy.
Yeah, and that it's kind of what we have on here. Is that's you have to have options for the endings. You also there does need to be at least you have to have some sort of stopping point in mind. It can lead, it can piggyback onto a full other story arc, but ones that drag on, because there are some that I know we've done some that were years, but some of them didn't feel like they drug on, and I'm sure there were some that did. I can't remember them because if I'm not entertained by them, I don't tend to. It doesn't stick in my memory.
You don't stick around, yeah.
But there's been plenty of people that have done story arcs, and they were, they may have been forgettable just because it was either so stiff or the outcome was predetermined.
Too rigid.
Very rigid, and or in some cases, which is really, I guess, where I was going, it never ended. It just
This is the derp show that never ends. Yeah,
it just turned to vapor, and because they either get so convoluted or there was no real end, or somebody gets attacked. Especially if the worst part is if it's a player character, and either death isn't an option, so they're always having to do the Skeletor "I'll get you next time" kind of thing. After
next
a while,
time, He-Man,
it gets old, and you start
get old.
You're like your villain turns from a villain into a joke. Which is what.
It's like, this guy's annoying. We got to deal with this again. Yeah.
It's just it turns it's like kidnapping plots. Yeah, we get it. You've been kidnapped. Good for you. But so another thing too are what kind of like hardline and rules, or what's your what's a no-go, or what kind of wiggle room do you have? Do you have to clearly you have to give them wiggle room, but there are, given it is role play, typically you have to go with it. But if somebody, that one story we had back in Spectre Cartel, where they had a long history in that guild, and it had been gone on, and then somebody came in, and their guild, their whole guild was basically a plot in itself.
Yeah.
And then somebody came in and they tried to rewrite that guild's history to put themselves there at the beginning of it. And once it was found out what they were doing, the guild leaders put a stop to it immediately.
Yeah, that's a no-go zone.
Right. You can't.
A no-go zone will also be, hey, this guy just got a critical shot in the boss fight. Well, I totally killed him, right? Well, no, because if you do that, you're just going to wreck the 3 other chapters I had planned. Well, I won. No, dude, that's a no-go zone.
No,
yeah, you can injure them, and they, I mean, there's...
And they'll bear that scar.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But just because you rolled a 20 doesn't, in a fight, doesn't mean you instantly killed them.
Like I said, it is not... Don't let somebody hijack your story.
Mm-hmm.
It's yours. You're the one who created it. Don't be afraid to take input or ideas, but don't let somebody hijack it.
Yeah, and
because you're the one who's put all the work into it.
Exactly. And there's a difference between wiggle room and, as we were saying, going with the flow and bending with the role players around you. And there's a difference between bending and breaking. And if you let somebody walk all over you and take over your plot, then you've broken, that person has broken the spine of your story, and that from there it flops around and
it's not pretty.
Paralyzed from the legs down, and it gets
things
depressed.
That flop around are not pretty.
I don't know. I think bunny ears are adorable, and they're floppy.
But fish that flop around, they're not pretty.
Yeah, it's because fish are tasty.
Flopping fish.
I don't
like
know
salmon?
I don't know where you guys' mind were going.
I was thinking bunnies. Mm-hmm. Little bunny ears. They're so fluffy and soft. So anyway, another thing too.
Did we get a Jazz back?
Yeah, she's back.
Jazz is back.
Welcome back, Jazz.
Thank you.
But another thing too, when you're doing these plots, are you going to allow character deaths, injury? How are you? What are the mechanics involved? What are you going to allow? Are you going to do rolling? Are you going to do freeform role play if there's combat? How how powerful or not powerful is the group they're going against, or not, or what. There's all those different little things you have to take into consideration. So you kind of these are things you have to think of. With at least with the NPCs, if you do NPC villains, like I did with the Chatteril, I knew there was a chance he came out of that alive. Very slim one, given the asshole that he was. But he was allowed to die, because that's kind of why he was created as an NPC instead of me using somebody I actually role-played on regularly. Injury, I would say injury needs to always be on the table, personally.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think you can ever make particularly a villain, and say he can't be injured, because that's God modding, and that's just going to piss people off.
Or that people can't be injured in the role play against them. There are those, you've got to be able to, take an injury. How bad, that kind of, that's going to be up to the story and the arc itself. Power levels, things like that. I always think you got to... well, no... If it's a big group of people, maybe, especially if they're going against each other, you definitely have to probably do rolling. If they're not, if you've got a couple people in there that are the always wins, they have to win. Otherwise, then clearly you're gonna have to introduce rolls and randoms and things like that. But if they're like good friends, then you could probably do freeform. I always prefer freeform over everything else, but at the same time, you have to be so careful who you do that with, which is we've gone over in combat stuff.
That can go sideways quickly.
Yeah, and rolling, and Jazz, you roll on everything, but I would say rolling certain certain decisions and how your villain reacts to things is usually a pretty good way to get around it. It helps take you out of the equation.
I think if it's not your character, then definitely rolling is probably the better option. If it's a villain and you want to leave it largely to chance, otherwise it's too easy to say, well, he's going to be super powerful, uber duper, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's too tempting.
Yeah, and it comes down to trust. Like the Watcher thing we were talking about, he was uber powered, but he was also meant to be one guy.
And we talked about it, though. I knew he was going to be uber powerful. We knew that going in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was the whole point, because it's not much of a challenge if it was just one regular dude going up against a whole bunch of other a whole group of dudes. It was
Silver Circle, which was a bunch of monsters.
Right.
So it was important that this monster be more of a monster, so that it was believable.
And it would, because otherwise it would have been a very boring fight too when things did happen.
Well,
which was worked, and that's the other thing too. If you're going to do these things, especially in a combat situation, don't be afraid to be creative. One of the things, I actually take it from the Jackie Chan and Jet Li versions of fighting. When if you're going to have like one real powerful dude or woman. Could be a woman.
A woman.
We've seen Battle Angel. She would kick everyone's ass.
She would.
But let people do their role, let people do their stuff, and if they roll on it, don't be afraid to, especially people that have load roll or failed their rolls, like your character can maybe grab them and chuck them into, so one guy rolled a 1, so you end up grabbing him by the leg that he kicked you with, and you chuck him into the guy behind you, which rolled a 5, and you've taken care of 2 guys in a single move. You use the other characters against each other. It's a much more entertaining way of role-playing out a fight scene against a big bad villain like that, as there's a lot more interaction, and you have other characters, maybe interacting with each other. Now, understand this also requires a bit of trust, because if you're the DM, you're telling people how their character is being thrown into another character. But if it makes sense, and you're not like, snaps his leg in 2, tears it off, and beats the guy to death behind him with it,
or having them blow themselves up because they missed their shot.
Right. That was one of the certain people would do that at times, and it was annoying. Or you're in a room full of gas, and somebody sparks up their arms, and your armor melts on you. That's not a good way of doing that. That's not for one. That's going into the god modding territory, and that's something you would ask somebody. But throwing one guy into another guy, if you're going up against the bad guy, typically you can get away with that as long as it's within your guild structure. And in the case of what we did, I had built up the trust that people were cool with that, and they all had a good. I never had a complaint, so and if I did, awesome. They should have come to me.
Yeah,
or Jazz,
or me. So, I would have heard about it before you did.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. But it's the way these things are handled. A lot of time, we all want there to be having fun. So if you write it in such a way that it is, people let you get away with a lot more, especially if it's entertaining. And and more so, one way I found out in servants especially was if you don't make people look stupid. When they roll good, you make them look like a badass, and when they roll bad, you don't make them look like a moron. You make the other guy that they're going against just better than them at that moment. They counter them. It's not that you shot yourself in the eye with your own bow and arrow. It's that the arrow was deflected off the shield and panged off into the distance or something like that. There's definitely ways to go about that.
Also, if you are a slow typer and sort of where you're going to go, for the love of God and all that there is, type it out ahead of time. Particularly if he's going to have a soliloquy, he's going to wax philosophical. If you have things that you want to happen, type them out ahead of time.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Or type out like he swings his axe. This is what I used to do, and it was kind of cheaty face. But what I would do is I would write out a series of actions on a text file. Swings an axe, if my character was into magic, does this spell, does that spell. It would describe each spell, so it was a paragraph. And because we'd played IQ for so long, we knew what the number limit was, so we could do these things. And then I would just block copy that little thing, and I would post it as I was typing things out. It sped it up, and of course, because I had not because I was slow, but because I had 10 different things going on at once. It made it easier for me to keep track of where I was. And as you guys know, sometimes I'd end up double posting something because I copied the wrong thing. But I did that because I wanted to keep everybody else entertained while I handled everything. Yeah. And if you are a slow typer, it is not hard to sit there and figure out what your character might do, and just little snippets of stuff that you can copy and then say, he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this. And it's already written out, so all you have to do is block copy, and then it goes much faster than if you type, stop, pause, reread, stop, pause, reread, type, pause. If I get it why people do that, because you want it to look good and sound good. But you've got to realize you've got 5, 10, 15 people all waiting, not only for you to post what you need to post, but then for them to post what they need to post. And they can't write what they're going to post until you write what you're going to post, because you're the GM.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of posting going on.
Right. So please write ahead of time. That helps. It also helps you, because you can go over it before the event and say, okay, this is kind of what's going to happen. And if you have to, change some things around, you can, because you didn't write the whole paragraph. You're writing little snippets that you can mix and match.
Yeah. So, and then, once you kind of, got that, you need to have one of the things that I think a lot of people they forget about is backstory and lead in. You don't just the Hobbit doesn't just start out with a bunch, or the Lord of the Rings doesn't start off with a bunch of hobbits trying to, getting out of the Shire already. They have showed how peaceful everything was. There's build up to all these events. Then Frodo's going to have to leave, or Bilbo's going to leave, and he leaves the ring, and this and that. There's that build up, and if you just cut straight to the, if you start the movie at the scene where the hobbits are hiding from the ring wraith underneath the tree, what the fuck is going on? How did we get here? Why is there? Where did this bad guy come from? There's no.
If you're gonna
lead up.
If heaven forbid you're gonna do the cliche, hey, I'm gonna get kidnapped. Hey guys, my character's gonna get kidnapped. It's gonna be cool, right? That's gonna be dull. People are gonna roll their eyes. Now, if you have a backstory written up that's leading up to it, people are gonna be like, "Oh right, we gotta go rescue A, B, and C because this is gonna be great. We'll stick to those dudes that did them dirty because you got backstory weight to go with it.
And you've been leading in for days. So
exactly.
by seeding other role play around you with what's going on, people are ready and waiting for the plot line to advance. By seeding just general role play with what's going on, people are excited. It helps. It's almost like advertising in a way.
It goes to the next part of what you had said here, Jazz, is what do you, and one of the most important things to put a plot forward and not monologue the entire thing is to decide what players and characters know and who knows what, and maybe don't give it all to one person. This people over here that did this event, they learned this part of the plot. This group over here, they learned a different part of the plot through another means. And over there, there's all these different plot threads that maybe you don't give all of one person, and then that lets them talk to each other, which creates a whole different role play of them putting all these threads together and weaving the plot, the story.
And I think that's, in my opinion, what's missing sometimes with some of the young people today when they're making these stories, is that everybody, they kind of throw it at people, and then they expect everybody to be at the same place they are. You have your own headcanon. You're going to have to feed people in and help people arrive at where you want to be, and work with people so that the whole story isn't out there in front, and they're not just sitting there going, scritch, 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 what?
Yeah. Well, and that's what you have to remember when you're coming up with these plots. Straffe, you know all there is to know about your character for the most part. I mean, there's probably some places where you'll be like, oh, that's a good idea.
For sure.
But we don't. And I think some people get so into it, into their own head, they forget not everybody knows what's going on. So while you have it in your head, it's perfectly clear and crystal, you've missed pieces throughout, or you skip ahead even, but there's a chunk of the storyline, a chunk of important knowledge that makes the story actually interesting or cohesive. You understand it, but you forgot to lay that thread down. You're still holding on to it in your own head. You just forgot, or you've lost track of it, or you did this or that, or for whatever reason, or worse, that you told one person this and either they forgot it or they stopped playing, which can happen. Right. And then you have to make sure that you really do have to make sure you're keeping track of where all your threads are at. And at times, you might have to fudge a little bit here and there and have your character, one of your other characters be like, well, I seem to recall, when somebody drops a thread or forgets all about it, or there's this or that. And it might just be a simple offhanded comment that, oh yeah, I remember that. And then you're back on track.
And that's the danger of giving one person all your information. What if that person is sick that day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or can't make it, or whatever.
Yeah, they can't make it, or they got a flat tire, and they were supposed to do X, Y, and Z. You need to have other people who are capable of taking up with the plot and following through. And that's why giving this person this, and this person this, and this person this, and tying them all together in a neat little bow is important. But you can't do that if you're not in charge and keeping track of it on your little chart or your little piece of paper. You should see, your own head, I have a notebook here in front of me, and when I am working on a plot, it looks like, I had a seizure.
Yeah.
Because it's just, there's sketches and...
You're like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. There's just string all over your office.
Yeah. Right. It's just like, if it wasn't for Scrivener, I would still be writing that way as well, because that's how my mind works. But now I know that I can write it like on this piece of paper, and I can keep track of everything. But I have to be able, when I'm doing a plotline, is approach people and talk. And tell people, what about this? What about this? Would you like to do this? What about this?
Yes.
Which buys people into your story and keeps people invested, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, always. Yeah, and the other part, too, is, you need to understand who is allowed to participate in the general story and who gets to be deeply involved. Because there are, if it's your guild, typically, all your whole guild especially if it's a bigger event. You should have plenty of room for your entire guild.
Yeah.
To be there. There's nothing wrong with smaller plots among like a small group of friends and things like that. That is perfectly acceptable. But if you're going to do a big one like what Strafe's doing, if he was doing what he's doing now and it was only meant for the 5 of us, probably it's way too big of a plot to keep in such an insular thing and far too important.
It'd be super uncool for the other players.
But if
why would they care at that point?
Right. But when you and you and Sib are doing a story between Trath and Volley, there's nothing wrong with that because it's you can do your own that one you had read earlier. Yeah, you do your own little thing. But
and you have to include a case in point, or one of the things I wrote on Jail, the aftermath of that when they got Volley back. I don't know the player who plays Fusro Derp, whatever his name is, the orc guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's kind of a neat brute character. But I still wrote down, Jail's thoughts on it. It's like, I don't know who turned this orc into a vampire, but he's definitely a blunt weapon for somebody.
Yeah.
You include everybody that was there, and I tried to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He may be the orc that saves the day, and we don't know. But if you don't include him, you're not investing your guild.
So, let's see here. And of course, obviously, the big thing too, you have to be talking to people. If you want, you want to
talk.
If you want them involved,
talk in the background.
Right. You have to make sure, one, you got to make sure they even want to be part of it. Two, and if they are, make sure they understand. Generally, most of it can be kept in character a lot of times, but every now and then, if somebody has a question, you have to be able to do that. But definitely talking to people. And informing them like, hey, this is going on here, this is going on there, and not just doing surprise stuff out of nowhere and be like, and half of them are like, well, I didn't even know about that. You got to make sure your stuff gets out there.
Yes. Well, surprise, yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
I was like, what? You completely lost me there.
As the whole channel shut down for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I did surprise.
Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of went over. Kind of have to decide up front what we kind of hit this, like you said, Jez, with the callers.
Right. Well, they had mentioned that, so I mentioned it.
Decide up front if you're
going to have NPCs. Who's going to be an NPC? Who could become a player character if they're interested? Who is, I tell people this every time they ask me about making bad guys. NPCs that are going to die, totally cool to give somebody that to roll a kill character.
Mm-hmm.
Do, for the sake of your own sanity, never roll. Let somebody take a character that they've already got, let's say, to max. I'll change his name and I'll be the bad guy.
Yeah. Or use the body of your character as an NPC, but make sure
that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, like, I have had, and we've, I won't name names. In Silver Circle, we had this. We had a guy that we were making a bad guy, and he was going to be this lich uber duber guy, and I thought it was a good idea. He had approached me about the idea, and he wanted to be a part of it because he likes liches, and I had written this lich in that, but had so far been an NPC off stage.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a character that he wanted to turn into the lich and play the lich, and he was perfectly willing to play it the way that I wanted to. And I laid out what was going to happen and how his character was going to end up, more than likely going up against 30-something people. He was probably going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was good friends with a friend of mine, I was like, sure, why not? Let's just go for it. It'll be fun. And it was fun until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't.
And he didn't want his character to die. And he was like, it's a level 60 character. I'm not going to kill it off.
Yeah.
So, no, and I like Sib said, I let somebody hijack my story, and I allowed this guy not to kill his character off. And he became a bad guy in the background because it had worked so well with the Watcher. I was like, surely it'll work again. No.
Yeah. Depends on the people.
No, it did not. So, yeah. know ahead of time what you want and stick to your guns. Don't let somebody change it up because they want the glory.
Yeah, they want to try it. They want to try something new, and they're untested, especially if they're untested. Because you're, and and I understand with the guy, him not wanting to kill off his character. I mean, it was his character, and he's playing it, but he went in at the same time. He did go into it with the agreement, and then he just changed his mind later, which unfortunately,
and all he had to do was change the character's name. He didn't have to delete his character.
Yeah,
this was after EQ had created the ability to change names, so he just could have changed the name of the character. I told him, "I'll give you the money for it. I'll buy it for you and gift it to you. But we need to kill this character off," and he didn't want to. I didn't make him, and in the end, it was just ended in tears. He left the guild. It was a mess. So
right, and then you're left holding the end of your plot.
And so we just killed him off anyway. I mean,
what do I do?
The bottom line is we were just like, well, he's dead.
Still dead. Yeah.
I think I remember this guy in question because I think we warned you, and you're like, "Oh no, it's gonna be fine."
You warned me, and I didn't listen.
Don't listen to your officers now.
Don't change your character. Don't change your story just because this guy and I didn't listen, and I felt bad, and I gave him a chance, and I got burned. So it is really important to stick to your guns. And
he got you in the fields, Jazz.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And there are sometimes too. There's nothing wrong, like for having maybe for your main villain NPC having somebody actually play that. But if you're going to have grunts, there's nothing wrong with just doing imaginary, especially if it's a quick combat kind of a thing.
The big bad guy can easily be somebody established that just says, okay, this is who this character is for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. If you
totally
see me, if you see me wearing this, I'm not my character. Right.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
there you
go.
And that is a very good way to do it because that way the person is not overly invested in the character remaining alive.
Yeah. Or having to be deleted or changing the name or this or that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, the other thing is how long will it take overall? Now, this one could be a little tricky because it is dependent on other people. But, got where the possible endings are and how long should you take? And really that's going to vastly depend on both the people involved, the number of people involved, the quality of people involved, and your willingness to kind of put up with and keep it going. Don't do Lost. Don't be like, hey, we don't know where we're going now. We had a good 2 or 3 seasons, and then we
we're just gonna fudge it.
We lost track of what we were doing. Or
don't do that.
Or what is it? Supernatural. Hey, we're on season 12.
9 seasons later,
it's never gonna end. It's 300 episodes later, which I'm sure Supernatural is great, and they've managed to go on this long, but. Was it Smallville? Smallville started out really good, and then towards those last couple seasons, man, it just kind of fell apart. They were all over the place. They were just it went nowhere fast. It should have ended far before that.
Yeah, when you go on too long like that, you start getting into power creep.
Yeah, and you can muddy it too. It gets so convoluted and back trails that the whole thing just becomes muddy, and then nobody can really keep track of it anymore, which is not any fun. And the power creep too. I mean, which Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, watch any anime, and you'll know all about power creep. It's you bring in a stronger villain. Well, Frieza was really strong. He was the strongest guy in the galaxy. Okay, well, we'll bring in Cell. Cell was the strongest. Okay, well, after that, we'll bring in Boo. Okay, well, Boo wasn't. Okay, you know what? Let's go back to Frieza. Frieza's been dead for a while. We're going to bring him back. Now, he's super strong. Okay, how about some gods? Let's bring in some gods now. It's just like...
Yeah.
Okay, so what...
They didn't know when to end it.
What's after gods? How about a god of the gods?
It just gets ridiculous. You need to have planned your exit strategy.
Yeah, but the animation got so much better, and the combat fight scenes still make it worth it.
It depends on your players, man. If people are getting burnt out on it, then shorten it out. Mm-hmm. But definitely have an end goal in sight.
Yeah, and if something
then play to your audience. So I think it's a smart way to go.
And if something comes up where it makes sense that it's not going how you wanted, but something comes up where you can end it earlier than you had intended, don't be afraid to do that. And maybe you can make a sequel to it and give it some more thought, something like that. But A story needs to have an ending. That's the whole thing. We're doing plots. You have to have a beginning. You have to have a middle. There has to be an end. Now you can do a sequel after that, but for that, that first book or that second book or that third book, there has to, like the Dresden Files. I don't know. There's 13, 14 of those books out, but every book is its own story, and then you have the series on top of that.
Yeah.
So it's okay to do it like seasons, kind of like we were saying.
But he also planned that. Good. Like I have books that are part of a series.
Right.
I already know that. I've never even written them yet, and I know they're going to be part of a series. So when I write, I'm writing for that point.
Yeah, but
it's fine if you're RP, like for Vaca and our long storyline. I had a dozen different things that I thought could come from it, and did. And even some things I didn't foresee. Thank you, Ren.
You're welcome.
So that, but I knew it was going to have spinoff. I knew there'd be a Miriam, for example. I knew that Toyana was a lot more than people thought she was. I had these things in my head. So it was okay when things didn't quite go the way I wanted because I already planned it out. But if you don't have that series planned and you're just kind of winging it, people get bored.
Right. Yeah, and that's where you end up in Supernatural or Lost, and it just kind of farts off into the wind. Or Walking Dead, even though they have source material for it in the comics, it still just kind of meanders now.
Yeah.
I also say play to your audience. People will let you know if it's going on too long or if it's
they will.
It's not long enough, or if they want more. You'll be able to tell.
Yeah. And some of them, it could, if it's going to take years, be honest, let them know. And sometimes, honestly, you don't even, it starts out as a small thing, and maybe it does go on for years, but people will come in, especially if it's the guild itself has an overarching story. People will come in, people will go out, people come in, but the main twists and turns of the story are still there, and people can jump into it. They can pick up where it's currently at. You can, every now and then someone will do a previously on, and they'll catch them up in story, which kind of goes into, well, actually we still have a little bit here. Yeah, and if it goes into, if it's kind of crossover to a few days, weeks, stand your ground. Like Jazz, you basically had already said, if you have it and you know how long it should take, and it continues to feel like the plot's going strong, don't shorten it just because somebody else, just if one person complaining, look at the quality of the person making the complaint. Just because somebody complains doesn't mean it's an actual complaint worth listening to. Anybody that's worked with the public knows that not every complaint is valid. So keep that in mind. Yeah, their service was terrible. Oh, you mean the service that you got when you came up and said, "Listen, motherfucker." That service that you got after that opening line, you were funny. You were unhappy with the service you got with that opening line. Huh.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah. So, and if it takes some time, go for it. If maybe it feels like it should be shortened, shorten it, Don't let anybody white knight their way into shortening or changing it so the story, they can be the fixer. There are those people that play the fixer characters, that everything that happens around them, they instantly know.
You are healed with one gentle tap.
I have healed you. And then when you were like, don't let that happen. How dare you not see that I am the healer and I have spoken?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fixer folks drive me insane, man.
Or
they don't bother me because I know they're there and I know that it's coming from a good place. A lot of them are not necessarily trying to.
They just want to be the guy or the gal that does it.
Yes, they want to be the center at that moment, and they feel like, especially if they're a multiple use character, so they are great at a dozen different things, like someone we knew in EQ2. And so when you don't use them for their myriad of talents, you have betrayed them. And it's easy to fall into that trap and change your story because they're somebody that has been involved for a long time. Don't fall for that. Yeah. Don't do it. Don't do it. It is bad. It ends badly.
He's so bad. And if you're going to include other people, recommended, by the way, don't make all of your own story characters involve others.
This is something that I see a lot of people who are new at making stories do. It is a huge mistake. They roll all the people that they want in their exposition. They roll, my sister's cousin's brother's fiance, and they have all of those people as
all their
alts.
alcoholic addictions are involved in every single plot line.
And they always know everything about each other. And then then they try to create a story, and they're like, "There's no room for anybody else."
Yeah. All your characters already know the whole plot, and they're solving. That's another good thing. Don't solve your own plot.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't.
That's called sabotage, self-sabotage.
I understand doing it to a point because you don't want I hate kidnapping rescue RP. Hate.
Right.
So my characters will usually rescue themselves, and you'll find out about it afterwards. But I didn't. That's my personal
not role
story.
Play, that's just a story. That's not even real role play. Yeah.
That's my story. That's
previously
not the same
on
thing.
Jazzy Star Galactica.
Yeah.
I patched myself together and I walked out the door. Problem solved.
I am notorious for that because I do not want people to rescue my characters. It drives me crazy. So, and I had to explain this to someone. That's my personal story, and if I choose to include you on that, great. If not, no. But when it's a guild RP, that's different. And
I
when
sure liked rescuing your tunes on Ren, but hey, he was kind of invested in her survival.
Yes, well,
yeah.
I had
what I'm
to
talking
use
about
her
is
for that.
is what I'm that's kind of one thing, but to actually you come up with the plot, and there's the Strafe for what you're doing.
Okay.
You got your evil brother, and so which is a separate character from Trithalis. You've got their brothers.
Trithalis.
So basically, what I mean is, why I don't solve that is you've set up all of this, and at the end of it, if we role play next week and Trithalis comes out and we find out off screen he figured the whole plot out. He found out where his brother was and killed him off.
Right.
Fuck
yeah,
you.
that's a douche move.
You've wasted everybody's time, and it's
wasted everyone's time,
and it's not a very satisfying conclusion. You really, if you're gonna bring a bad guy in like that, you have to let them figure out the strands and then kind of come into defeating him and fighting against him. You need to let that plot play itself out with the other characters, not come in and solve it either role playing with yourself because if you had two accounts. And defeating your own bad guy. That's very, very unsatisfying.
I'm going to call that the dancing with yourself syndrome, and don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and it's completely pointless. Why did you didn't need all that other stuff was just a waste of time because the end result, which I get it. Okay. Oh. The journey is the story. Yeah, well, it's fantastic, except that, if you get to the end of it and it turns out California no longer exists because it fell in the ocean while you were traveling the country, it's still not a very satisfying ending to that story.
Yeah.
Sure, you had a lot of fun when you stopped at all those, fast food restaurants on the way there and you got some roadside jerky, but then you get to California and you're like, oh.
It's in the ocean!
I'm in Nevada. Why is there a beach here, Lex Luthor? Yeah, it's not very satisfying. So moving on so we don't drag this out too much longer, last little bits of it. Exposition. This is where the plot is defined and given fuel to burn. Don't shortchange it. People need to help you with this. Take part in the story and develop and slow burn. Take part in the story, development, and slow burn into the mess you want people to make. Include people. Yeah, sorry. I read.
Sorry, I was just trying to, part of these things, you're making a mess, and then you're having everybody fix it. So
yes,
exposition is getting people the fuel to burn to make the mess, and it's very important to do that. If you just throw it at them, it doesn't mean anything.
Do it in a cool way. Don't do it in a, you, the master of lockpicking kind of way.
That was perfect.
Don't monologue your way.
Yes.
Don't monologue through your exposition. You can do that for certain parts of it, but you don't want to be like, all right, everybody, go solve it.
Show, don't tell. Needless exposition drives me absolutely mental.
Yeah. Okay, so next part here is plotline. Once people are interested, you need to keep them interested. Don't be boring. This is where most stories kind of fail and fall apart. You don't want to leave people hanging, go silent, vanish, or worst of all, honestly, I could deal with the hanging, especially going silent or even vanishing. What drives me crazy is when you're in the middle of one plot line this person started, and they start another plot line.
Yeah, don't do that.
Separate from the first one. Completely separate. Unrelated at all.
That's so annoying.
And what I mean from going silent is like you literally leave the game for 6 months and then you come back and you're like, okay, so where'd we leave off?
Yes. See, and even that irritates me less than starting another plot line in the middle of one.
That's true. Yeah.
That's just me personally. That's my twitch. But some stories do require kind of hopping around, which, what you guys had said earlier with Straffe, you had your main story thing. Seb came to you and added a little bit out to it. You went to Jazz and you added a little bit she let you add a little bit of history to her character. It kind of branched, but it's an ugly ass tree. It branches out, but it still all goes back to the main trunk,
It does, yeah.
It's all still connected. It doesn't branch off and then go off into space and never to be seen. It loops back around to the trunk of the tree. It's not a very good-looking tree. Probably not healthy. I would not advise watering that one.
Yeah.
But
it will kill other stories.
Yeah, when you hop around,
things
they'll die. You'll die off on it's basically you're cutting the limb off of the tree at that point. It's just gonna.
And this also this is part of another thing. It's all the same thing. With the hopping around bit, when you're explaining to someone or you are doing your exposition, you say, and over here, this is happening, and then over here, this is happening, but don't worry about those right now. Right now, I want you to do this.
Yeah, don't over-explain everything out of character, especially.
Yes, because that's kind of like... That's like my statistics teacher who wrote down this whole thing on the board to explain something that we were learning, and to explain the formula and why it works. And then she was like, oh, wait, that is wrong. All wrong. And she erased the whole thing and said, never mind, we'll do that next week. I just about put my head through the desk. I was just like 16 pages of notes. She's like, never mind, don't do that. That was wrong. We'll do something else.
Major twitch.
Thanks, lady.
Yeah, and that is what a lot of people do with stories, is they throw in too much that has nothing to do with the story because they want to make their character seem complex. And then they're like, but don't mind those things, just focus on this. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, let's change this.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah. And if things do have to change, as they do have to evolve. Of course, if something happens, you can change it that way, but there's a difference between a change and an evolution as opposed to a 180 degree rewrite. Don't an evolution of the character and the plot is one thing, but don't completely don't spider clone it, where it's like, they come out with the spider clone, everybody hates it, or they come out with the new Spider-Man back in the 90s and everybody hated it, and they're like, it was a clone the whole time, and then everyone's like, we don't like the clone thing, that's stupid, bring us Peter Parker. Like, just kidding. He is over here. Don't do that. It's awful.
We need a segment on the show now called "Don't Do That."
Don't do that.
Don't do that. That's a bad idea.
And
it's the wrong tone.
We've talked about with creating villains. They need to be engaging, imperfect, and interesting. Even horrible people have some interesting qualities, and even good people have horrible qualities. That can make them.
I agree.
Don't only not be afraid to make your villain 3-dimensional. Make your character 3-dimensional. Don't make them Skeletor in Cobra Commander, like we've said. You need to make them Emperor Palpatine or even Darth Vader. He's as 2-dimensional as he comes off at times over this whole story arc. There's a lot more to it, a lot more to what he's done.
And that's why I'm writing the whole backstory for the bad guy in our current arc. I'm doing his way backstory so people can get invested. Oh, this guy, he might have redeeming qualities, he might not.
Yeah, motivation for a villain is very important, even if it's a bad guy. I mean,
yeah.
I know everybody uses the Hitler thing, but Hitler, in his own mind, he was doing what he thought was, it's going to be great, it's going to be wonderful. He didn't see him.
Not only that, but even Mussolini had kids, and they loved him.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that even bad guys...
Genghis Khan had a few of them, too.
A few.
Yeah, a few.
Cough. A few?
A few.
Try a horde.
I heard a statistic of how many I think it was at this point, I think hundreds of thousands of his descendants are still roaming around Asia.
My goodness.
Yeah, because they just that man, he knew how to party.
Something like that.
It's not a party you wanted to be a part of, but boy, did he
liked the ladies, I'm just going to say.
Whether they liked it or not. Yeah.
No.
It was that mustache. Yeah, that Fu Manchu thing. Yeah, people love that. Jazz, I'm going to let you read number 7, because, I don't know, for some reason this seems like this would be something that should be said in your voice.
Take it away, Jazzy.
I knew you were going to do that. Okay. Climax is king. Drawing the story to a fevered pitch is the only way to make a seriously engaging story. Involve your players. Push it to the climax. Draw all those loose ends and make it slap them hard.
Mm-hmm.
Once there's a climax...
She said slap, bro. Is that a dubious clap?
No. That was a dubious slap.
That was a wannabe dubious clap.
Nope.
So anyway, it's important to know where and what defines the climax. What are you going to consider to be the height of the story, and where are you going to go from there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you have to have, and a lot of movies would be really boring if they didn't have a climax. It'd be like,
and understand that the climax happens, and then the race to the end is on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So the time to drag your feet is not then.
No.
You can take all the time you want in exposition and development of the story. Really. You really can, as long as it's not obnoxious. But once you've hit the climax, you need to get to the end, and it's going to go kind of fast. And so it's important that you know where that climax is. We knew that when the Watcher and Vaca finally clashed, and Toyana got involved, that it was going to go quickly after that.
Yes.
Because they had not been able to catch him. So we knew that if they ever caught him, it was going to go very fast at that point.
Well, and to use something I think everybody's probably seen, the Avengers Infinity War. Now think if you build up that entire movie, that first 2 hours, and then they finally get to Wakanda, when they're all the superheroes are gathering, and Thanos is about on his way, and right as the giant alien ships come crashing down all around Wakanda and bouncing off the shield, and the Horde is coming out, and then maybe Thor appears and starts kicking ass, and then the movie ends.
Yeah, that would not be cool.
And then they'll pick that up, and then they'll pick that up in the next movie, a couple weeks from now. Don't do that. You need to continue on with Scarlet Witch comes down, Vision gets his ass whooped, Thor doesn't aim for the head, or more importantly, maybe instead of the chest, take off his arm, jackass, and then the finger snaps, and that's when things go to shit. And that was where you stopped that movie, because now everything's that major plot point has come and gone. He's off watching a sunset. Everyone else is just sitting around like, what the fuck happened? I think we lost. Yeah, you think so? Yeah, you kind of did. Yeah, you killed Spider-Man.
That killed me, the Spider-Man thing. Everything, I was stuck in it until I was afraid Mr. Stark. I was like, oh gosh, no.
We left that theater. There was a girl, a 20-something-year-old.
It was so sad.
She was...
Whoa, spoilers!
Inconsolable. If you haven't seen it by now and you don't know what happens...
It's on Netflix now, come on.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
I have never seen it, and I know how it ends.
If you've not seen a meme in the last year, you know how it ends. But,
dang.
It's just...
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Here comes Rahanar.
Bring it. If you haven't seen it by now, I have no sympathy for you. It was one of the biggest movies of the year.
Spoilers.
I'm going to spoil you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of everyone here at the podcast, I apologize for those spoilers.
Go back to your hole.
This guy. Hey, back to the hole he went.
So, yeah. I mean, at this point, I'm going to be honest, if you haven't seen Infinity War, you're fucking stupid.
Oh, gee.
Behind the times, I say, Ashes. Behind the times.
Ouch.
No. Especially it's on Netflix. Seriously.
I'm too poor for Netflix.
You can.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I've read all about it. So
you can download it for free.
I know.
Don't give me that line.
I know the gist of what happens.
Yeah, I know. You just give me shit. So
It's
stupid.
had to give you problems.
So yeah, but I mean, if that's the thing, if you have to know when the plot is, when you hit that climax, you can't stop in the middle of it. And if you do, for the love of God, you better pick it up the next day, especially if it's run long or something. I get that. It can happen, but this is why you need to plan these things out. Because if you know that's going to hit that night, you need to make sure that you are able to finish it that night. You got it. You don't want to start a climax without being able to finish it.
That's bad form, sir.
And that is true in real life as well as plot stories, folks.
I'm so glad you guys went there because that's right where my brain went.
Bad form, bro.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about stories. I don't know.
Stories.
This is all about writing and role play.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure it is.
All right. Well, if you want to read more into it, that's your prerogative. You filthy monkey gutter trash.
Oh my God.
Love it.
So, once things have, Jazz, you basically hit this. Once the things of once the climax is hit, you're on top of the hill. It's the race to the finish. It typically won't take very long. 1 or 2 events at most. Honestly, you should probably do it in one, if at all possible. Mostly because even if you do it in the second one, the people are going to feel jilted if they can't make it at the first one, and they can't make it to the second one. And people that made it to the second one have no idea. They have to figure out why they're at the second one. Right.
Right.
Yeah. When it's time, draw it to a close firmly and vigorously and with purpose. Did you mean to make this sound like everything was a double entendre?
No, I really didn't.
Okay.
I didn't do that on purpose at all. I did it. I did not intend for that.
Hold on. She's not done. Don't deliver a weak ending because you suddenly change your mind.
Oh!
Commit to the end and follow through.
Hey, I gotta be somewhere. I'll see you later. What?
He'll be in his.
Oh my gosh!
He'll be in his.
Guys,
we have gone to the bad place in RP Radio.
Yes, we have.
Hey, when it wrote itself. I was just reading it, and maybe I read it in a way that made it sound a certain way. But I
almost done. Let's go.
Would you say you wrote that well?
I would say I wrote it very well. So anyway. Events aren't storylines. Storyline arcs aren't necessarily events. How do they relate? Both are absolutely reliant. I don't know, why does that word not look right? That's weird. Reliant.
It says it's spelled right.
I know it is. It just it looks funny. Anyway, relying on good planning and outlines. Plans and communication is still king, and there is a difference. Like a storyline can have events in it, and you could do multiple events, and that builds up the storyline. But not all events have to be a story part of a storyline. They could just be
events.
The event is the event.
And the difference is like
combat training, for example.
10 years. And we had events as part of that. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of that story that wasn't an event. It was just people taking part in roleplay.
Yeah.
Whereas the Watcher storyline was just a bunch of events, but it told a story, and it also included the deeper story that was happening around it that didn't include everybody.
Yeah. And in one event that's not ever a storyline, like combat training or dueling. That's just an event. It's fun. People have their role play, and maybe a little bit stuff comes out of it, but typically It's in the
and
moment.
that's fine. Just have your planned what you're gonna like. If you've said, okay, there's these bad people here, we're going to go and smite them. That's fine.
Yep.
But if you do it every day,
proper
it gets
smiting.
annoying.
Proper
Yes.
smooting. Okay. And lastly here, and it happens, and it can happen for multiple reasons. What do you do if there's no interest?
And this is something that I see with a lot of new people that are new at this.
Yeah.
They plan, they were intricately planned. They do a good job. I'm not saying that they didn't, but there's no interest or nobody shows up or whatever. And they're like, well, I'm never doing that again. And they walk away and they never do another event. You can't talk them into it. Because
but Jazz, but they did it on the 22nd of December. Why didn't anybody show up?
Right. There is always a reason, and a lot of times it has to do with timing. And that's why I've told people, and they're like, I'm never doing this again. Look, just try it again. It was a fluke. Sometimes it is just a fluke. Sometimes you don't realize, like for me, I remember we did a storyline. We had planned it for weeks. And when it went off, nobody was there. And Xanis came on like 3 hours later and was like, oh, there was an event? I was so mad at him. I was like, we've been planning this for weeks. How are you not here? And he was like, it was a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think I went to, which I don't bother with now, but it was mostly there. That was back when the commercials were good and they were worth actually being around.
Well, I mean, I think you had a bunch of friends over or something, but there was a big deal. But I didn't even think about it because I don't watch football. So knowing what might be there to take away from their interest is really, really important.
Yeah.
Kind of important.
Yeah, well, and sometimes too, another thing, aside from the timing too, it could just be the way you presented it. Remember when I did that scavenger hunt thing in EQ2?
Yeah.
We had almost nobody showed up. Those that did show up, it was a very quick event, but it was a lot of fun. But because somebody else in EQ2 had done scavenger hunts and done them so piss poorly, using the phrase scavenger hunt made almost nobody show up.
They're like, nope, I'm out.
Because the scavenger hunts before, there were all sorts of rules and regulations, and it had to be done their way, and somebody had to be in your group, and there were clues, and you had to go out to the world, and it was just a nightmare. Mine was literally, I made a zone and put a bunch of screeching boxes, about 100 of them around there, and whoever got the most inside of 10 minutes, won a token.
It was fun. Yeah.
And it was a bunch of people scrambling around. There wasn't really it was role play before and after, but during it was everybody just scrambling everywhere trying to find these screeching boxes that were hidden all over the map. It was those little red ones that went like a bird.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Boy, I mean, and when you put all 100 of them on the ground and got within earshot, oh, that was an awful noise.
So yeah, I mean, it can be just timing. It can be what somebody else did, and people are like, oh, I don't want to do that kind of event again.
Yeah, or you just didn't. It could be even that you didn't explain it well, and it didn't. You didn't make it sound interesting, and they're like, oh, that sounds like a hassle, And maybe it's the best thing that could be the best RP they've ever had, but it'd be, let's see, like the iPhone. If when the iPhone had come out and they had just advertised it, like, so we got like a phone, and it's kind of got a little bit of computer-ish stuff in it, and it's got a calculator, and it's got this talking broad. Anyway, it's going to be $800.
Talking broad, there you go.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nobody would have bought it.
Nobody would have bought it. But Steve Jobs was a lot better than that, so everybody kind of got onto it. Spice things up, talk more, make sure involved parties knew and know what to do if there's no interest still. Answer questions, basically, too. Because sometimes if people have questions, there's a certain level of coyness, obviously, coyness that goes with it. But you don't want to give away, like I have people ask me, Indigo earlier, it's like, all right, what's the plot today? I was like, plot development. Or what's the show about? I was like, plots. Okay. And he's just been dying to call in ever since that last time he tried, and his mic decided, like, you know what? I don't want to talk to anybody.
That's true. Sometimes that happens.
What Indigo Jules said in the chat, and if someone asks to know the climax ahead of time because they are a slow typer and want to prepare for it, please talk to them like an adult. Do not give them the 2-word response that pisses me off like no others. No spoilers.
Right.
Which I can totally understand that.
Which, by the way, Indigo, from now on,
I don't type very fast and I want help, I'll give them a heads up a little bit, but
Yeah, and it just depends. It depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but by the way, it'll go from now on. Every time you ask me any question, that's the first word that's going to be out of my mouth is no spoilers. You shouldn't have said that. That was a mistake. But yeah, giving people, a little heads up if they need it, or is not giving away the whole show or having the whole, a whole argument ahead of time or the topic.
Well, as you know, we had people that left the guild because we didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
We have people that want the whole thing laid out for them on a platter so they know what to expect, and I don't do that. So, if your character doesn't know it ahead of time, and you haven't been paying attention to the exposition that's been happening in every guild event because you don't attend guild events, that's really not my problem. So,
not her problem. I'm
a horrible
unbelievers.
Person. I'm terrible. I will admit that. I'm absolutely terrible about that because to me, it's like I have done this and this and this. It's been at every guild event, at every time I'm in the tavern, I'm talking about it. Every time we're doing this or that, our last 2 events mentioned that this was coming. And you want me to give you the whole thing of what's been going on for 3 months because you haven't come to any of those events because you don't like crowds. Well, what do you think the event's going to be? So sorry?
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
And there's another thing, too. I kind of get it in the realm of, for slow typers, but ask in character, not out of character. Create roleplay with it. If your character wants to know what's going on, ask in character.
Yep.
You don't need to have the whole thing spoiled for you OOC, because guess what? Your character still doesn't know shit, even if you do. So you need to still keep everything as in character as possible, and don't expect everyone to want to be involved with your personal story. You have to make it about others too. It's just any story can. Not everybody's going to want to be involved.
Yeah,
there's going to be people that don't like you or that don't like your style of roleplay. I'm that way. There's certain people that I don't go to stuff because I've tried a few of their things and bored the hell out of me, so I don't go again. Strafay, you're most of them.
I'm well aware, sir. Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah, well, honesty. One person's honesty is another person's asshole. So,
the fact that you show up once in a while, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. And one thing too, Insomniac said, this will be our last point, and then we'll go off of this really long show. Sometimes with a story that no one is attending, you just got to write it off. I had to go through that, and it was painful, but it was taking enjoyment away from me having no one attending, which is true. And sometimes that does happen. There can be a lot of reasons for no people. It could be timing, as we said. It could be that other people have spoiled something, done something similar, and they fucked it up beyond all measurement and recognition. So it turns off everybody around that. It could be some personal vendetta. Some assholes are railing against you. It's happened. Could just be that it's not their style of thing. There's any number of things. Not all of it. Some of it can be personal. Not all of it usually is, though. And you have to. Like I said, I was kind of ticked off and disappointed that the scavenger hunt thing so long ago didn't have more than 4 or 5 people when there were literally 20 or 25 people online. But because it was scavenger hunt had been so damaged, it was annoying, but then I just had to let it go and realize it wasn't because of me.
Sometimes something that you think is really cool isn't going to interest anybody else.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, chalk it up to a personal story and move on.
Yeah. You've learned something, and it's time to go from there. So, all right. Well, I think that'll do it. I think that's plenty long enough.
Well, that's the whole outline. I'm impressed. We made it all the way through.
Yeah. Well,
all the way to the end
with the callers, and again, appreciate you guys for calling in.
Yes,
that's
thank
definitely
you so much.
I prefer that, but there were so many good points that Jazz had put in there. I really wanted to try to power through it, even if it took us an extra. It's really only an extra about 40 minutes if you think about when we started 10 minutes late. So, just an extra 40 minutes. But, okay, well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate you over at twitch.tv/RPMMORadio. Oof, you can tell it's been a while. Go ahead and follow us over there, just like Deck 1987 did earlier before the show. I'm only assuming that that's probably a year that they were born. I don't know why. It's a weird thing for me to put the year you were born in there. It makes me uncomfortable because then just like one thing away from finding your birthday, and I will find where you live. So no, thank you, Deck, for following us over there, just like everybody else should.
Or else.
Yes, and if you want to contact us, rpmradio.com/discord. We'll talk to everybody that shows up throughout the week. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe. We do have that. I think I forgot to mention last time that I did put our full about hour and 40-minute thing of Fallout 76 roleplay up over at our youtube.com/rpmmoradio, I think is the thing. So you can see that there. We've actually had quite a bit of interest in that too, so I'm thinking we might do a few spin-off things with some people that have wanted to try and roleplay in voice chat and give it a shot. I know Ericus was one, David R. Haley is another. I'm going to get some of these other folks set up so that they can actually stream on Discord as well, so I don't have to be there, but like Sib and Strafay, Jazz, your internet might be that's your deciding factor. And you, Faye, I know you're not really, happy.
Well, my internet has gotten much better. You may have noticed.
Yes.
They upped my line.
Yes.
And my kids, but not my husband. Poor guy. Because they only have so many lines, so they basically tie.
Yeah. Okay. The music's playing, so speed this up, all right, would you?
Oh, anyway, we're fine.
There you go.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
But yeah, look for that. We'll let you know when we start doing that stuff. So with that, tune in next time. We'll go over halflings and why their plot made no sense. Next time, take the goddamn giant eagles. Thank you. That is all. Next time on RPMMORadio, play on and keep the roleplay going. Music, as always, is provided by Husky by the Geek. Visit him at youtube.com/HuskyByTheGeek to hear all his great video game rock covers and original music.